Shabbat Shalom, everybody. My name is Noel. I just told Polly I'm going to slow down and take a quick drink of coffee here. Think about what I'm going to say to you tonight. As you can see, I have my friend Polly Hart with me. Of course, my name is Noel, and if you don't know where you're at, we're at the Unexpected Cosmology tonight. And Polly and I I'll say we go way back, at least, in truther time and flat earth time, we go way back. And he was one of the first couple of flat earthers that I actually met online. And I don't know what prompted me to call you on the phone, Polly. I think I called you, right? It was like 2016 or 15 or something like that. It was like way long ago. And Polly tells me, like, he gets this call from me. It's this really weird conversation, and hopefully I won't let you down tonight. But why don't you? Polly is he's written dozens of books at this time. I mean, this guy is a prolific writer, and he's covered some flat Earth material. Polly, why don't you introduce yourself quickly to everyone, for those who don't know who you are, where they can find you, and so on and so forth.
All right. Well, hello. My name is Polly Hart, and that is the moniker I go by online. My real name is Paul. If you want to sue Polly Hart, feel free, but I don't have any money. Or he doesn't have any money. He's a fictitious person. Anyway, PollyHart.com, PAULYHART.com, and you can find all my shenanigans online. I have written a couple of books. I'm almost at 100, and I dabble with all sorts of writing. I started writing as a child. I really started taking off in 1994 when I was in Russia with poetry. I was like, I want to be a poet, because that's awesome. But here's the thing, nobody wants to read poetry, nobody wants to buy your poetry, so I've written a bunch of poems, and a couple of them are okay. And I just kept on writing. I had to get over some inner pain from my 6th grade teacher, who told me I'd never be a writer. And that was tough, having to heal from that. But the entire 6th grade class, our entire English course was The Hobbit. That was it. So once I got through the healing on that, I decided to keep on writing, and I realized, as C.S. Lewis once said, we don't need more writers writing about Christian things, we need more Christian writers. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I just kept on trucking. I've written a couple of interesting books, Biblical Cosmology, which is on the, is it on your site, Noel?
Biblical Cosmology is for sale on our site, yeah.
Okay, yes, you should go to theunexpectedcosmology.com and pick up a copy of that. Or you can read it free at biblecause.com or flatearthdoctrine.com. You can read it free there. And I've written some other things as well. I just find joy in horror stories, which sounds kind of odd. Like, what kind of horror stories are you going to write that are like Christian or whatever? And I'm like, well, you see, horror stories just have to survive to the end, right? And so what better salvation than the maker of salvation, he who made us? He gives us salvation. So most of my stories have some sort of supernatural theme, and there's a setting, and then God gets involved, and watch out. So that's what I just do for fun.
Yeah, a lot of his, you guys check out his work. We have a lot of his shorts. I love his story. I love Polly's stories, and we have a lot of them published on the Unexpected Cosmology, and he regularly brings them in. And we have a lot of material covered tonight, so let's get right into it. I can't believe it, we are on week 16 of SHAMA'UATH, Exodus, from the Paleo Hebrew. And of course, this is Pamela's document we're going to be going through. This is tonight, Exodus 13, 17 through 17, 16. So as always, when I have a guest on, I have Michael on, or I have Pamela on, this time Polly. I'm going to read a section, and then I'm going to hand it over to him for first notes, whatever he has on it, and then I'll cover the rest. So here we go. The history of the Exodus continued. And he will exist when Pharaoh sent away the people. Allahayam did not lead them the way of the Philistines, or the Phalashathuyam, although this way was near. And we're going to be looking at, Polly's brought up some maps, and we'll be looking at, why it was closer for them to go the way of the Philistines, and they went basically the opposite way. For Allahayam declared, lest the people lament in observing battle and turn back into Matraim, Therefore, Allah turned around, the people to the path of the wilderness of the SHAMA'UATH Sea. Now, you can see there Pamela has the number 2. So let's look at this real quick. That is the Seaweed Sea. And, we call it the Red Sea. And she says that the proper translation should be the Seaweed Sea. Which, interestingly enough, I think the Aramaic Targum calls it the Seaweed Sea. And as a host arrayed for battle, the sons of Yasharel ascended from Aratz Matzarim, and Meshahah took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had caused the sons of Yasharel to swear, declaring, certainly Allah will visit you, and you shall lift up as a powerful sign my bones from here with you. Now, I have variably all throughout here my own kind of additional passages and notes. Was there anything you wanted to talk about in that first paragraph there, Polly?
I do, and so I'm not as smart as Pamela, obviously. But so most of my stuff is just like personal insights or maybe historical things that when I created a game, Empires and Generals, I researched Egypt a lot. The first through the 18th dynasties, New Kingdom, etc. And one of the things that jumped out to me in this one is it's interesting that the people wanted to go to battle, and yet they were all ready for battle, and Allah was like, nah, you guys ain't ready. And for me, it's like that Psalm 23, he makes me lie down in green pastures. Like when I want to do something, it's like, and he's like, you're not ready, buddy. Just go lay down. I'm like, I don't want to lay down. I want to fight. I want to fight, Daddy. I want to fight. No, you're not ready. And so that's what I got from this guy.
Yeah. I think about it. I think of it as being meek. And I've said this a lot on this channel before, that when Yahushua HaMashiach said the meek will inherit the earth, and it was somebody a long time ago in our group, Josh, who first mentioned this. And I love this analogy of a meek person being actually a war horse. Because a lot of people, they think of meek, they think of like some sort of wimp or something like that. But like, if you could think of a meek person as like this vicious war horse, and let's say that like an angel is, it could be Yahuwah using this war horse, or like one of our, like say even our guardian angel, or it's our angel writing this for us. And we have to know when to charge forward into battle or stand back, right? And or when to flank the enemy, or whatever, do all these things. And we have to be on the commands of, we have to know spiritually our rider so well that that he doesn't even need reins, right? He just kind of like presses into the ribs with his, we just know what to do, right? And so many in the faith have this idea that they can just, as you said, Polly, they could just charge into battle, and they could, they're going to pray about it, and Yah's going to be, and you just imagine like how many times Yahuwah or our guardian angel, whoever, is just like, oh, here he goes again. Like, I can't use this person. This person's not a meek person. I cannot work with this person. So if we want to do the most damage to the enemy working for the kingdom is knowing, that when to go forward, when to go to the left or the right. And here's what it says. I wanted to really cover here really quickly. This is what it says in the Targum Exodus. And I thought this was interesting, referring to pulling up Joseph's bones. And Moshe carried up the ark in which were the bones of Joseph from out of the Nilos, and took them with him, because he adjured the sons of Yasharel, saying, Yahuwah will surely remember you, and you shall carry up my bones with you. Now, what really stuck out to me there is that here we have, again, however people feel about the Aramaic Targum, this is an ancient document, and right here it says the Nile. Now, we were commenting in past weeks that nowhere in any translation can we find the word Nile. It's always like the big river or whatever. And so when people are looking to see where was the historical Yasharel, the historical Babylon, the historical Egypt, the historical Rome, right? And many people are looking to North America. It is interesting, that's one of the pieces of evidence I'll point out. It never says the Nile River. I just find this interesting that here in this ancient document, it does say the Nile River. It's worthy to point out in any kind of investigation. And then this is the story. I'm going to really read quickly here, hopefully go through this, on why Yahuwah, or in this case, Allah, did not want to lead the children of Israel towards the Philistines. This comes from the book of Jasher. At that time, in the 108th year of the Israelites going down into Egypt, there went forth from Egypt valiant men, 30,000 on foot, from the children of Yasharel, who were of all of the tribe of Joseph, the children of Ephraim, the son of Joseph. Now, I want you guys to think about this, because who are we grafted in through is through Ephraim. And yeah, and it's so many people, like, we're so anxious to like get out of slavery, get out of the system, get out of Babylon, get out of Egypt. And this right here is kind of, I think, a lesson that generation needed to learn. And hopefully we're not going to learn the hard way either, that in some respect, you have to wait for the hand of Yahweh. You have to wait for Messiah to do this for you, to come in and be like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, he was the one to part the Red Sea, and all they had to do was be obedient and walk through it, right? But before our appointed hour, there's only so much we can do. For they said the period was completed, which Yahuwah had appointed to the children of Yasharel. So they're saying, look, our time in slavery is over. We're going to go out and by our own power, we're going to go do this. We're going to free ourselves, which he had spoken to Abraham. And these men girded themselves, and they put each man his sword at his side, and every man his armor upon him, and they trusted to their strength. And they went out together from Miriam with a mighty hand. But they brought no provision for the road, only silver and gold. Not even bread for that day did they bring in their hands, for they thought of getting the provision for pay from the Philistines, and if not, they would take it by force. And these men were very mighty and valiant men. One man could pursue 1,000, and two rout 10,000. So they trusted to their strength and went together as they were. And there it is right there. They're trusting to their strength. Nowhere did Yahuwah tell them, okay, it's your time to leave, right? He never sent a prophet, none of this stuff. And they directed their course toward the land of Gath. And they went down and found the shepherds of Gath feeding the cattle of the children of Gath. And they said to the shepherds, give us some of the sheep for pay, that we may eat, for we are hungry, for we have eaten no bread this day. And the shepherds said, are they our sheep or cattle that we should give them to you even for pay? So the children of Ephraim approached to them to take them by force. And the shepherds of Gath shouted over them that their cry was heard at a distance, and the children of Gath went out to them. And when the children of Gath saw the evil doings of the children of Ephraim, they returned and assembled the men of Gath, and they put on each man his armor and came forth to the children of Ephraim for battle. And they engaged with them in the valley of Gath, and the battle was severe. And they smote from each other a great many on that day. And on the second day, the children of Gath sent to all the cities of the Philistines that they should come to their help, saying, come up unto us and help us, that we may smite the children of Ephraim who have come forth from Egypt to take our cattle and to fight against us without cause. Now the souls of the children of Ephraim were exhausted with hunger and thirst, for they had eaten no bread for 3 days. And 40,000 men went forth from the cities of Philistines to the assistance of the men of Gath. And these men were engaged in battle with the children of Ephraim, and Yahuwah delivered the children of Ephraim into the hands of the Philistines. We're going to see this again in probably the next couple of weeks, when again the children of Yasharel just go off without Yahuwah to fight for them, and they were straight up told he won it, and they're slaughtered. And they smote all the children of Ephraim, all who had gone forth from Miriam, every single one of them smitten, gone, wiped out. None were remaining but 10 men who had run away from the engagement. For this evil was from Yahuwah against the children of Ephraim. For they transgressed the word of Yahuwah in going forth from Miriam before the period had arrived, which Yahuwah in the days of old had appointed to Yasharel. And of the Philistines also there fell a great many, about 20,000 men. And their brethren carried them and buried them in their cities. So it sounded like, I think there were 40,000 that came out of the cities, right? So at least half of them died. And the slain of the children of Ephraim remained forsaken in the valley of Gath for many days and years, and were not brought to burial. And the valley was filled with men's bones. So this is right here why Moshe, or Yahuwah, instructed Moshe not to take them through there, because if they did, they would have seen all the bones of Ephraim from this battle just still laying there, just on the ground, almost like the killing fields in Cambodia or something. And the men who had escaped from the battle came to Miriam and told all the children of Yasharel all that had befallen them. And their father Ephraim mourned over them for many days, and his brethren came to console him. So that's interesting. If Ephraim is still alive. And he came into his wife, and she bare a son, and he called his name Beriah, for she was unfortunate in his house. Yasher 75. Now I just want to quickly point out what it talks about here in the Aramaic Targum. And this is interesting, just food for thought. Okay, if you guys come to a different theological conclusion, we don't need to freak out. I'm just the messenger here. I'm just I'm reading to you what this says, okay? And it was when Pharaoh had released the people that Yahuwah did not conduct them by the way of the land of the Philistine, through that, though that was the near one. And again, we'll look at maps in a little bit. For Yahuwah said, lest the people be affrighted in seeing their brethren who were killed in war, 200,000 men of strength of the tribe of Ephraim, who took shields and lances and weapons of war and went down to Gath to carry off the flocks of the Philistine. So you see, well, I'll comment on this in just a second. And because they transgressed against the statute of the word of Yahuwah and went forth from Miriam 3 years before the appointed end of their servitude, they were delivered into the hand of the Philistine who slew them. These are the dry. Now, I want you to pay attention to this here because this really stuck out to me. These are the dry bones which the word of Yahuwah restored to life by the ministry of Ezekiel the prophet in the vale of Dura, but which if they now saw them, they would be afraid and return into Miriam. So according to this, the Aramaic Targum, they're saying that when Ezekiel was talking about the valley of dry bones, that he was actually referring to this incident here in Ephraim, and they're saying that this had already happened, that they had been restored. I don't know. I wasn't there. So just take that. But I do want to comment too on, there was one thing here, and now I can't remember what it was, and I'm live.
Can I comment real quick about what you just said?
Please do.
That is amazing. I mean, especially when talking about Ephraim. I mean, come on. The amazingness of that, that's with the prophecies of Ephraim returning, the bones coming up. I don't know. That kind of blows me away. I mean, I've read it before, but I'm like right now with the context, it just clicked with something in me.
One of my growing theories on the Aramaic Targum is that it actually gives credibility to the book of Jasher. And yes, this is rabbinical commentary in some respects. Okay, so I'm not pretending that it's something it's not, but it appears to me like I see case after case after case where they're taking the book of Jasher, they're taking Genesis and Exodus and so on, and they're kind of bringing them together. And so you see this here in this incident. All right, continuing on. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Polly, before I move on?
No, sir.
All right.
Not at this time.
So they marched from Succoth and pitched in Atham on the borders of Medabar, the wilderness. And Yahuwah, the ever-living, walked to their faces by days, veiled over in a pillar of cloud to guide them along the pathway, and by night in a pillar of fire for a light to them to walk by days and night. And I just quickly point out, I love how Pamela phrases that there, how he's actually walking over them, and he's veiled by this pillar of cloud. And it's Yahuwah literally like walking on these clouds. I think it's a beautiful picture. That the cloud is there to veil his glory. That he's not, the cloud itself necessarily, but he's like physically over it. He never gave way the veil of the pillar. At least that's how I'm picturing it. Maybe you guys picture it a little bit different. He never gave way the veil of the pillar of cloud by days or the pillar of fire by night to the faces of the people. Then Yahuwah, the ever-living, set words in order to Al-Mashahah, saying, set words in order unto the sons of Yasharel, and they will turn and encamp to the face of Phaya ha-Charath, the mouth of caverns between Magaduel, the great tower. And this is where we get the word like Migdol, like Miriam of Migdol, Mary Magdalene. It's the same word, the great tower. And between the sea to the face of Baal Zephon, she put there Lord Typhon, which basically that's saying what Baal means, the Lord, right? You shall encamp opposite against the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the sons of Yasharel, they have confused themselves in the land and have shut themselves against the wilderness. And I will make strong the heart of Pharaoh, and he will pursue you. And then I will be made heavy with splendor in Pharaoh and in all his host, that the Matri may that I am Yahuwah the ever-living, and they accordingly fashioned it. All right. I have some commentary to go over. You can see right there. I want to talk about the Baal cycle and others. Was there anything you wanted to, what? I'll just keep reading a little bit more, Polly. No, actually, this is a good time to stop. Before we get into your pictures that you wanted to show, was there anything you wanted to comment on this?
I do. and I think you're going to bring up the mashal beacons here in a little bit. But the Egyptians had a really intricate shipping system, and they were basically lords of the water before the sea people came. That they would lure the sea people into the shores and just pelt them with arrows. What's interesting, if you remember the Ten Commandments with the rifle guy, I can't remember his name, Charlton Heston, right? Yul Brynner says, this God of the Israelites is a terrible general, because he's saying, hey, look, they're idiots. They've trapped themselves in this corner, and Migdol, or the great tower of the Migdol, Magadual, as she rates it, was a really important watchtower. It controlled that little corner of the shipping channel that went up and around the two inlets of the Red Sea. And that was basically, look, you could put a signal, you could put a big beacon and say, hey, we're going this way. Put a light in front of it, hey, this is almost like Morse code or sign language. You could talk to the other mountains, and the other guards, and the people in the sea by these huge beacons. And I think it's super, super interesting that the pillar of cloud and fire, conversely, is actually two, in my research, two actual beings. So as Michael Heiser says, the two powers in heaven. Because at one time here's the cloud and then here's the angel. So you've got this almost two guys coming. And I'm thinking, okay, well, it's the Ruach and the Father, or the Father and the Word. I don't know what's going on there. I'm not a theologian by profession. Didn't have the time to dig into it. And I'll tell you what, man, it's mind blowing that here is Yahuwah saying, oh yeah, you got your little pillars of fire. Oh, check this out. Like kind of like almost exactly the same as he did with the plagues and the staves. He's just making fun of them. He's like slapping them around and showing the children of Yasharal, hey, look, I'm this big dude. You don't have any worries. I got you back. It just blows me away. I love it. I can't get enough of it, man.
Well, okay, so you sent me some photos you wanted to go through. So let's go through these right now. What are we looking at right here?
So we are looking at this area called the Straits of Tiran. There's an area just south of the isthmus, I would say, around these little ports. That is a mountain called Baal Zephon. And Baal Zephon, you can see it in all these scriptures where it says, and you shall camp here, and across the sea you'll see Baal Zephon. You're supposed to point to that area. And I've looked at all the other research. Well, I can't say that. I've looked at a lot of research on this is Baal Zephon, this is Baal Zephon. Some people put it way up where the Ugaritic cities were. And I'm like, I'm just not sold on it, because if you look at Numbers and Genesis and here in Exodus, it basically says, look, this is where it is. If you're struggling to, sorry, my cat's itching or something. Get up. If you're struggling to really get a grasp on where it is, just read the scripture, and it's going to show you right there. You're looking at Baal Zephon, this mountain, and I've got some theories on what is going on that mountain that I'm not really 100% on. But I do know that
give it to
there
us,
might have been. Okay.
Even
so,
if it's like 75, 80%, 90%, give it to us. We want to hear
it. All right. So Lord Typhoon, how she translated it. Lord Typhoon is the Lord of Darkness, also called the Lord of the North. Yeah, scroll down a little bit there, Noel. I want to show them that map. So here we have this area here, and you'll see this red dot, Israel's camp 8 days, kind of in the middle of the map. And you're looking right at Mount Baal Zephon. You're looking at this mountain. Now, this mountain was untouched by the Egyptian Empire. The new Egyptian Empire. They didn't want to touch it. Ramses II's group. They didn't want to touch it because something was happening on this mountain. So they had their shipping channels steer clear away from it. There's no archaeological evidence of like hardly anything on this that I could find. Maybe I'm completely wrong. And I'm thinking, okay, if this is Lord Typhoon's house, who is he controlling? What is he doing? Why is it called the God of the North? Well, it's at the very northern part of where the Red Sea enters before it splits. This whole little isthmus here on the left-hand side, where the pillar of fire is shown, that is the intersection between the two gulfs, the two inlets. And it's kind of amazing in that nobody wanted to go to Mount Zephon, Baal Zephon, because that's who lived there, was this council member, one of the 70 council heads. And I don't know what his deal was. I haven't found much research on it, but I will say, and I don't even know if I put it in my notes, man, but I will say that he is worshipped as, in Ugarit, he's the king of the sea, and you have him as the king of the Nile, and it's this water god. And he's like supposed to be, to them, here's El, and this is in Ugaritic, here's El, and then here's Baal Zephon. So this is like, in our understanding, in our religion, this is where Yeshua HaMashiach would live, but it's not him, it's just their version of him, which is their deity, or their demigod, or their council member, the god they serve, lowercase g. He's a tough dude, and I don't know if he came around and had, you know, Nephilim children. I don't know, but it's super interesting. I love studying the Nephilim, and I want to find out where they're at, so I can go spit on them or whatever. But or write a story about it. But it's completely bedazzling to me. Oh, you want to talk about that, man?
No. Let's keep talking about
that. Just scrolling. Okay, baby. Okay, give it to me. Oh, I got so much to talk about that. Okay.
No,
but anyway, that's all I got about Mount Zephon for now. I'm still digging. I really am.
Let's go. What's next?
Okay, so there's a lot of theories on. Scroll up a little bit so they can see that 50 meters, a little bit there. So here we have the Straits of the Tiran Depths. The Tiran Depths go from southwest to northeast. And if you travel along there, if Yahuwah had taken exactly like the word says and made walls of water, and what is a wall of water? It's a solid substance, so therefore it has to be ice. If he took that and pushed it down, well, if you're walking, and the biggest miracle is the 250 meters, but maybe at that time it was still 50 meters, so we don't know. Maybe that's exactly where Pharaoh was drowned, the 250 meter spot. I don't know. But this is all a coral reef. This is this huge coral reef. And yes, Yahuwah can create a miracle anywhere he wants. But I think that Occam's razor tells us that if you look hard enough, you'll find, via the scripture, sola scriptura, you'll find a really good spot for an explanation. And I believe it's here, and so does the author of this site, that here we go. So Pharaoh enters in. Now, it does say that he had all his horses, all his chariots, every single part of his army. Oh, that's in the next part. But he had every single one except for his admirals in the sea, and they're right there, you know, with their little pillars saying, "Hey, he's over here." Oh, you know, flash or whatever, smoke signals or flashes of fire. And Pharaoh's like, "Why did he go that way? That's stupid." So he's going to march down there and think he's got it. But so you know, Red Sea parts. Moses is like, all right, let's go on dry ground. Now that word dry ground, that's the red, that's the actual ground. So here's coral, here's the sand on top of it. It is ground, it's not plant life because you're walking on sand. There's this ice wall, walk across, and I don't know if it was the 2 million or the carts they had or the livestock they had, but I believe, and this is just me, that the sifting of the sand trampled down and all that was left is coral. And by the last guy, old Jethro back there, he's the last guy. I'm coming. He's walking around, and as he's walking behind him, is the sand is dissolving, and it's this coral. So we see that Pharaoh's wheels were taken off, like the hand of Yahuwah took off the wheels, the power of Yahuwah. And so, how hard is it to drive a car or a chariot through a pile of mush, nasty coral? Pretty hard. So you've got all the chariots stuck, and then you've got the horses behind them, and you got the guys with the javelins or whatever, and they're like, "Hey, let's get through. We can't move. Oh no!" Oh, they're panting, and they're like, "Oh man, I gotta try to get through this." And then so Yahuwah's like, "Ah ha ha." So there's a lot there, man. I just reading this for the first time in this way, with Pamela's translation, just kind of blew my mind.
All right, next
Oh.
picture. What do we got here?
That is all that's left of Pi Ramses. And if we don't know for sure, there's a lot of speculation on who the pharaoh was. But if we see that it's Ramses II, that's all that's left. That little pedestal with feet is the only thing that's left of his new capital, Pi Ramses. That's all that's left. Just gone. And that's just God laughing at him. Psalm chapter 2.
That's
Hilarious.
quite the judgment. That's quite the judgment of it for such a great pharaoh, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. He was the greatest pharaoh ever, and that's all that's left. It kind of reminds me of Ozymandias. Behold, here's the mashal. Here's the just like a picture of a guy, one of maybe an Egyptian corporal, or just he's out in front. He's like, okay, I set the way. All right, all the generals, guys, we're gonna come this way. He's gonna okay. Hey, put the fire up. Okay, damp it. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that means go north. So this is again Yahuwah just laughing at them with his own pillar of fire. You think you've got skills? Haha! Check this out.
Nice. All right. Let's see. And then what's this here?
That is a geological, the geographical pin. If you go up to see the longitude, latitude there. So Suez and Aqaba kind of diverge and point directly at this point here and connect. And where they connect is kind of like the seat of power. And I don't know geologically if it's changed at all, but that is Mount Zephon, or Lord Zephon, the house of Zephon, darkness, the king of darkness, Lord Typhoon, as Pam says. It's pretty interesting.
All right. And then, you got here on
Hadad, there he is. Yeah. They call him. If you look in the very middle of that text, it says Baal Zephon. That's just from Wikipedia. Everybody had him as a god, one of the gods in ancient Mesopotamia. Everybody's like, oh yeah, that's the guy. That's Hadad. That's Adad, or Baal Zephon, Hadar, Rephidim. They're gonna incorporate him as, and we're gonna understand him as Bel in the Mycenaean and Crete grouping, if you believe the Atlantis thing.
So he was quite the powerful dude. And then we see here again, this is actually a picture of him, right?
Yeah, that's from the Ugaritic. They call them stels or steels. Each person had a teraphim in their house. A teraphim is a household god. And you put this guy on your cornerstone, and then you also put him as your capstone in your house.
Okay.
And I think by your threshold as well.
And then I think you had one more here.
Yeah, so this is, and I'm not sure about the guy's accuracy on the Hittite Empire, just in French. Sorry, I couldn't find it in English. But at the very bottom of the Arabian Peninsula there, you'll see how kind of the whole water system works, and why Pharaoh said, you know what, that's a dumb idea. Why do they do that? So they walked on the right side of the Suez inlet instead of the left side, where they might have been attacked by Philistines. And the Pharaoh's like, he knows this land. This is how his ships get copper from A to B and then up the Nile. So they have to schlep it a little bit inland to get it to the Nile, and then it goes right to Memphis or all the way down to any of the other cities. But he knows exactly what's going on there. It's just a desert wilderness. There's like so many different parts of the wilderness. They each have their different name. He knew they were done for. And so, again, the miracle, mighty hand of Yahuwah just coming in and just smashing every pretext that Pharaoh thinks. It's just, for me, just hilarious. So,
thank you, Paulie. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about more about Baal Zephon. And so here we see, for those of you who went through the Leviathan series with me, and one of the things I talked about was how Baal, according to the Baal cycle, apparently claimed to have killed the Leviathan. And so you see these two texts here. And this is addressing to Baal, when you killed Lotan, the fleeing serpent, annihilated the twisty serpent, the potentate with 7 heads. Not going to get into all that again. You could watch that video. It says the heavens grew hot, they withered. And then we read, have you forgotten, Baal, that I can surely transfix you for all that you smote Leviathan, the slippery serpent, and made an end of the wriggling serpent, the tyrant with 7 heads. So I think this is really interesting because it's kind of like, I'm kind of reading this like, Yahuwah's like, all right, Baal, like, I don't know what happened with the whole Leviathan thing, but he's like, all right, you I'm about to drag you, like, it's your turn now to be dragged into the ocean and be, annihilated, so to speak. So it's almost like it finally struck me that this event that's happening with the Red Sea crossing is like almost like a retaliation to this so-called Baal cycle, this very popular Canaanite story being passed around. So here's what we read in the Aramaic Targum again. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the sons of Yasharel that they return back and encamp before the mouth of Hiratha as they lie, created after the manner of the children of men, male and female, and their eyes open to them. It is the place of Tanes, which is between Migdol and the sea, before the idol Zephon or Typhon. That is left of all the idols of Mizraim. So the idea is that all the gods have been judged now. We have one more god, one more Elohim to judge, and this is Zephon. For the Mizraim will say, more excellent is Baal Zephon than all idols, because it is left and not smitten, and therefore will they come to worship it, and will find that you are encamped nigh into it on the border of the sea. So they're basically saying, like, they're going to be sitting ducks out there, right? Israel, if they go out past up to Baal Zephon, they're idiots. I mean, they're going to be lambs to the slaughter. They're going straight towards this God. He's our God, and he's going to just wipe out Yahuwah. He's going to cream him and all his children. All right, so this is what it says further on in chapter 14 of the Exodus Targum. I found this really interesting. And Pharaoh said to Dathan and Abiram. I want to quickly kind of look at these guys a little bit closer. Sons of Yasharel, who had remained in Mizraim. The people of the house of Yasharel are bewildered in the land. The idol Zephon hath shut them in close upon the desert. So Dathan, I believe he's the character in the 10 Commandments movie, the Charlton Heston movie. He's like the bad guy in it. He's the guy that gets everyone to like worship the golden calf. And we're going to look at a few passages where he shows up. But I find it incredible that you have some Hebrews, some children of Yasharel, who are so against Yahuwah that they actually stay behind after the Passover, mind you. The only reason I guess they lived is maybe they put the blood over their door. They were maybe wise enough. They stayed behind. And these two guys are like the epitome, the very definition of a spiritual tear. I mean, I can't think of a better example of a spiritual tear being amongst us than, these two guys are like representatives of guys who are in our ranks just to get us to be disobedient. And they're here just to stir up the crowd, to get the spirit of the accuser on us, like these two guys. And we see these two guys manifested all throughout our ranks. And so, So let's see. This is now from, this is Exodus chapter 2 from the Targum. This will be a familiar story. And he went out the second day. This is Moshe, and looked, and behold, Dathan and Abiram. There's the two dudes again. Beavis and Butthead. Men of the Yehudi contended, and seeing Dathan put forth his hand against Abiram to smite him. So these two guys at this time were going to kill each other. They became allies later on against Moshe. He said to him, wherefore dost thou smite thy companion? And Dathan said to him, to Moshe, who is he who hath appointed thee chief man and a judge over us? Will thou kill me, said he, as thou did the Egyptian man? And Moshe was afraid and said, verily, the thing has become known. Well, we then see these two men show up again. So they stayed behind, but they somehow end up in the camp again. I personally think that they probably they got into the crowd, rode up with Pharaoh, and they were probably stirring the crowd to get them to be thrown into destruction and to accuse each other and things like that. But we see them again here in Korah's rebellion. lo and behold, here we are. This is from the Masoretic text, chapter 16 of Numbers. And now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, and Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the sons of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took men, and so on and so forth. I almost think it's interesting too. I didn't have time to look more into this today, but I found it interesting that these two dudes were sons of Reuben. And when you read the testament of the patriarchs of Reuben, he talks about the spirit of jealousy, that he had the spirit of jealousy towards Joseph, which led him to want to murder Joseph. And he ended up, he was saved, and he ended up, just being thrown into slavery. But it's this idea of this spirit of jealousy that drives people to cause division, to get the sheep to scatter, to ultimately try to bring down and dethrone the leader, in this case, Moshe. They had it out from him from the very beginning, and they wanted to see his ministry crumble and fall. And eventually they're done in. So this is what Legends of the Jews, Volume 3 has to say. When he reached the sanctuary of Baal Zephon, Pharaoh, in his joy at finding him spared while all the other idols in Egypt had been annihilated, lost no time, but hastened to offer sacrifices to him, and he was comforted. For he said, Baal Zephon approves my purpose of drowning the children of Yasharel in the sea. So he's seeing I personally think he's seeing a connection here with what Baal Zephon claimed to do with Leviathan, that he destroyed Leviathan. And so he's going to be like, yeah, we're going to bury these people in the deep too. Baal Zephon, he's the storm god. He's got control of this. All right. So now it looked to me, Polly, like maybe you had different maps. Now, I think the maps, tell me if this is different than yours. I was going specifically, I think you had them walking along the edge, right? I think what I'm going with here is what Ron Wyatt proposed. And so I think his proposition was that this Red Sea crossing site, it's a 5-mile wide beach. Now, later on, we see that the tribe of Israel, it was 12 by 12 miles. So 6 miles to the center. And so this here, 5 miles would be greatly congested. Like they're not pitching their tents. Like it's, man to man, shoulder to shoulder, all huddled together on this beach. I mean, they are literally like, you want to drop a bomb or something, like they are lambs to the slaughter. They are there just to be literally pushed into the sea. And if they did, in fact, take this route through this canyon here, this winding canyon, that this is what Ron Wyatt suggested. Like that, again, you would look to Moshe as your leader going, are you crazy? Like, why in the world are we going on this route with you? Like, there is no escape. There is no way to get out of this at all. So, and then here's a kind of another picture here too of the from above the road they actually would have taken. Again, according to Ron Wyatt, there's the beach right there, the 5-mile stretch of beach that they would have all been camped on, and then Pharaoh, he's coming, like the pillar of the cloud would have touched down probably right about here at the base of this mountain, and to block Pharaoh and his army from crossing. And oh yeah, this is cool here. Actually, there's another photo I have, but you can see way up here in the corner, Mount Sinai. And from Mount Baal Zephon, you could actually see Mount Sinai. Like you could stand on that mountain and you could look across the Red Sea and you could see Mount Sinai. I mean, it's so epic. You have the mountain of Yahweh and the mountain of Baal right there facing each other. It's like something out of Lord of the Rings or something. Here is, of course, Polly talked about the coral reef, and yet, here we have chariot wheels and other things discovered. Pretty epic stuff. One of the things that was discovered in here was these bones, and they found this to be from a 5.5 foot tall man. These came from a right leg, and they estimated to be 3,500 years old. So they found even Egyptian bones down at the bottom here as they were wiped out and massacred. Oh, and here's the picture here that you can see in Saudi Arabia, Mount Sinai way over there. So it's like a little tiny peak, but you can see it. It's so epic. All right, these are Polly's pictures. So let's get through this.
No, that's a good explanation. I didn't know. I do know one thing about those chariot wheels. And maybe right now is a good time to talk about it if you want.
Yeah, please do.
Um, so the Hyksos Empire basically introduced the chariot to all of the Fertile Crescent. They obliterated the early Egyptian kingdom. Egyptians were like, hey, you know what? Maybe we should build some of these too. So they had some. The the interesting, really interesting thing is that they had just come out of, and if we follow history, the Battle of Kadesh. If again, it's Ramses too. The Battle of Kadesh. They hadn't trounced or fleeced the Hittites, but they were up against the Hittites, and the Hittites had a three-man chariot. The Egyptians did not have the three-man chariot. Well, the Hittites had six wheels, and they had only a limited number, but when the Egyptians kind of got rid of them, they introduced the three-man chariot to the Egyptian army. And we have in the text here where it says, and I don't even know if it got to it yet, did we? But it says that he took his select 600 three-man chariots, as well as his other chariots, as well as his other horses, as well as all the rest of his army. So it wasn't really understood why Egypt had the three-man chariot with four wheels, because that was also a Hittite invention. Four wheels instead of like the old 18 wheels or six wheels even. It was lighter, so you could hold more people. And if you put four horses instead of two, you could go faster and carry more people. So they didn't have the technology, I guess, but when they started absorbing the Hittite technology, they had four wheels. So those photos of the wheels were taken at the Ron Wyatt site. Is that correct?
Yeah, he actually dove down and he discovered the wheel. I'll go back up here again. Yeah. Well, some here, there they are.
Yeah. Those are exactly the wheels.
And that's
amazing.
A lot of the wheels, they actually became like part of the coral reef.
Yeah, coral absorbs and just turns whatever else is down there. I would love for Ron to, well, not him or someone who's carrying on his legacy, to do more work down there. Unfortunately for him, he's been really discredited. I don't like it, but I mean, the fact he's been discredited, I like him a lot because he introduced me in the '80s to Noah's Ark and all that. But no, I would love to dig into his stuff, man.
What's interesting about Ron Wyatt is that the first thing you will hear out of anyone's mouth was he was in a cult usually, and you're like, oh boy, here we go again, and finish the sentence because he kept the Sabbath, right? He was a Seventh-day Adventist. He kept the Sabbath. He ate clean. Therefore, he was in a cult, and so this is the number one way he's discredited. People will throw him under the bus immediately. You go to Answers in Genesis, some of those, they will throw the guy under the bus. They're like, oh, he was in the cult. They'll say it. Like, he kept the Sabbath, right? So I personally think I'm like, dang, like this guy was like, if there was any guy in the 20th century that was a real life Indiana Jones, it was Ron Wyatt. No, he wasn't slapping Nazis, right? But he wasn't getting
that you know of, Noel. I mean, he could have been slapping Nazis. I mean, there could be this whole Ron Wyatt story that we have no idea about. And yeah, he was in the cult of Yeshua HaMashiach, right? Because he also ate clean and obeyed the Sabbath.
Personally, so Ron Wyatt, apparently he discovers Sodom and Gomorrah, which to this day, it's snubbed. To this day, people will mock it. They don't want anything to do with it. Even other Christian sites. And Answers in Genesis, I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but they will mock his Noah's Ark, same thing, mocked. He discovered the crossing here. He discovered a lot of things, and I think that it's almost like Yahuwah is like, look, I just want somebody who's keeping my commands. Look, I got a guy right here. He's eating clean. He's keeping Sabbath. He's not perfect, but look, he's looking at this. He's trying to keep the commands. He was there. He's available. He's like, hey, I want you to discover this stuff. And of course, there's also the Ark of the Covenant story as well. But anyways, let's keep reading. We're doing good on time, but it's so easy to fall behind on these things. Scrolling back through all these pictures. Here we go. When it was told in the sight of the king of Miriam that the people had passed through, the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was overturned about the people, and they declared, why have we fashioned this, that we have allowed Yasharel to go forth from serving us. And he made fast his own chariot and took for himself his host with him. And he took 600 select chosen chariots and all the chariots of Mitzrayim with 3 men upon each of them. Thus Yahuwah, the ever-living, made strong the heart of Pharaoh and the Malak of Matrim. And he pursued after the sons of Yasharel. But the sons of Yasharel went forth with a high, lofty hand. Mitzrayim pursued after them all the horses and chariots and horsemen of Pharaoh, and overtook them and camped by the sea against Phia-ha-Chayath to the face of Baal Zephon, or let's see if I can pronounce this right, Zephon. And Pharaoh approached, and the sons of Yasharel lifted up their eyes, and behold, Mitzrayim ascended behind them, and they were greatly terrified. So the sons of Yasharel cried out to Yahuwah, the ever-living, and they said to Al-Mashahah, were the graves in Mitzrayim, I love this, the bickering, were the graves in Mitzrayim defective, that you snatch us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you worked thus for us, to carry us forth from Mitzrayim? Is this not you figure Moshe had to be a glutton for punishment. I mean, this is just the beginning of his 40 years of having to put up with this. And, I'll say this really quickly since it's on my mind. I hear constantly within Torah groups that, they can't wait for the second Exodus. They can't wait. And, we're all going to go out in the wilderness and it's going to be like Red Rover, so-and-so come on. It's like, no. Like, we're going to be, you've seen how it is online. Like, we're going to be wringing each other's necks in like, well, there'll be like a weekend, maybe a week of like a honeymoon. And then it's going to be like this all over again. But I digress. Why have you worked thus for us to carry us forth from Mitzrayim? Is this not the words which we set in order when we explained to you in Mitzrayim? Leave off, cease from us, allow us to serve Mitzrayim. So they're basically saying, like, look, we already told you that we didn't want you as our leader. We told you to leave us. You just kept coming back, and it's like, why? And yeah, so for it is more pleasant to serve Mitzrayim than we should die in the wilderness. And it's one of those things where those who try to save their own life will lose it. In this case, and we're going to see much of those examples in the coming Torah portions. But in this instance, Yahuwah decides to save them. And even though they were, talk about bad attitudes. And Mashahah declared unto the people, do not be terrified, stand in place and observe the salvation of Yahuwah the ever-living, which he will work to create for you today. For Mitzrayim, whom you observe this day, you shall not observe them yet again for a time of long duration, perpetually. Yahuwah the ever-living, he will wage war for you, and you will be silent. And Yahuwah the ever-living declared unto Mashahah, why do you cry out unto me? Set the words in order unto the sons of Yasharel. They will go forward, and you lift up your branch and stretch forth your hand over the sea and divide them. And again, Pamela always puts it for like a rod or a staff here, a branch. It's kind of interesting wording. And the sons of Yasharel shall enter through the midst of the sea on dry ground. But I will make strong the heart of Mitzrayim, and they shall go forth behind them. And I will become heavy with splendor upon Pharaoh and upon all his army and upon his horsemen. And in the heavy splendor I gain upon Pharaoh and upon his chariots and upon his horsemen. Mitzrayim shall acquire knowledge. For I am Yahuwah the ever-living, and Malak Alahayam, who walked to the face of the encampment of Yasharel. And in the pillar of the cloud, he went from before their face and stationed himself behind them. And he came between the army of Mitzrayim and the encampment of Yasharel. And he will exist the veil of cloud and the darkness to them. But he will enlighten night, and so this one does not approach the other all the night. And Mashahah stretched forth his hand over the sea, and by a strong ruach, Yahuwah the ever-living, caused the sea to walk back all night. And he rendered the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided. And the sons of Yasharel entered into the midst of the sea, and the waters were to them a wall on the right side and on their left. Handing over to you, Polly, if you have any commentary on this.
Bro. All right, let me come back up here a little bit. Moses, good guy. Moses. I mean, Moshe. Look, he's like, they're like third graders. He's like, you know what, guys? Hey, I understand you're afraid, but check this out. Here's what's going to happen. And he'll cause you to shut up. he didn't say it like that, but he was nice about it. It is super interesting. Just for 10 to see, and here's this thing with light, and I've got this, I don't know, this really interesting theology about Yahuwah causes blindness to those who he doesn't want to know what's going on. So here's this wall, this thing where light's shining out this way and darkness is shining out this way. Now, darkness is just the absence of light, they say in science class. Well, here's the thing. We know from scripture that he created darkness. And so before there was light, there was something else. There's chaos. But he also creates darkness. So he's shining forth darkness. Maybe I'm using the word shining incorrectly, but he's projecting darkness their side. And we see it all throughout scripture. And I've got some verses: Exodus 4:11, Deuteronomy 28:28, 2 Kings 6:18, Psalm 69:23, Zephaniah 1:17, Zechariah 12:4, Isaiah 44:18, which is again quoted in John 12:40, where he is the blinder of those who he doesn't want to know what's going on. And in this case, just from a wartime perspective and tactics alone, brilliant. Even my most hated verse to people when they misquote it, 2 Corinthians 4:4. The God of this age is blind, and they're thinking that that's Satan, and I'm like, well, from the Greek, it literally means the true theos of eternal infinity has obscured the minds of the untrustworthy, so they cannot experience the illumination of the Anointed One, who is the representation of theos. And I'm like, that's exactly what's happening here. He's projecting darkness upon them, and before I've read it in this translation, thanks again, Pamela. Before I read it here, I was not really aware. And if it took place at Ron Wyatt's site, just like the Battle of Thermopylae and Sparta, King Leonidas, you've got this bottleneck juncture. And if you've got this wall of darkness shooting through the canyon, I'm sorry, man, you can't do anything. It's over for you, logistically. There's nothing you can do. Sorry, I don't know if you heard that. A policeman just went by. But to me, not only fire, not only clouds, but you've got a projecting of light and projecting of darkness. Bro, it's over. You've got all the forces of I mean, you might as well have lightning, right? I mean, come on, what electricity are we missing here? Or energy are we missing here? Nuclear? It's amazing. I'm just blown away. I love it.
Yeah, I have commented so many times that I sound probably like a broken record by this point that it's so evident that Yahuwah, that he surrounds himself with darkness. And I'll say this, and I'll hear other people go like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, you're saying that our God is dark. And I'm like, actually, yes, he does. He surrounds himself with darkness. And we have all seen in our journey, especially lately, where things are getting really wacky and crazy. We're seeing so many people being turned over to this darkness and just walking away. And that should, I said this, I think, last week, and I'll probably continue saying this, that in the idea of having the fear of Yahuwah, not like we're talking the fear out of like respect and honor, not like a terror sweat type of fear, but the fear that we should all have is actually Yahuwah handing us over to the desires of our heart, like Pharaoh, and handing us over to the darkness where he just darkens himself. And now we are not on the illumination side anymore, the enlightening side. We are now on the side of darkness. And we stand there and we go, how could I? We've seen this before where someone will say, how in the world could have I ever been fooled by the Bible? How could have I ever seen that as truth? It is so dark and ridiculous to me now. And you just walk away, right? You're on Pharaoh's side now. You are now on the opposition. Yahuwah is now your opposition. And that's a terrifying thought. So let's see, what did I put here? Oh, so this is talking about, this is from the Aramaic Targum again. And this gives a slightly different perspective. And what I want to show to you is, once again, the Aramaic Targum is lining up with the book of Jasher. I do believe Jasher is an ancient text. And the Targum is just basically trying to piece the two together. And what we're going to see is that we always picture that there was this one walkway where that the seas were parted and they all walked through. But according to these two texts, there were actually 12 divisions. And so in 12 parts, the water is separated and they walk through. And that's how they were able to get everybody across in the night. And they all would have been according to their own battle divisions, really. So this is what it says. 4 parties were made among the sons of, I'm going to backtrack here. And we're going to see that there were actually 4 different views as to what they should do when they were backed into the sea. Baal Zephon and Pharaoh came in. 4 parties were made among the sons of Yasharel on the shore of the weedy sea. And there you go, Pamela, right here. It doesn't say the seaweed sea. It says the weedy sea, which is kind of interesting. It doesn't say the Red Sea. And this is the Aramaic. One said, let us go down into the sea. Another said, let us return into Mizraim. Another said, let us set against them the line of battle. And another said, let us raise a cry against them and confound them. So only one group says, let's cross the sea. Kind of interesting. Unto the company which said, let us go down to the sea, spake Moshe, fear not, stand still and see the salvation of Yahuwah, which will be wrought for you today. To the company which said, let us return to Mitzrayim, Moshe said, you shall not return. For though you see the misery today, you will see them no more forever. And I really think it's those 2 dudes, Beavis and Butthead, showing up to cause dissension. They're actually working for Pharaoh. They're ultimately working for Baal Zephon, and they're in the ranks pretending to be with Yahuwah, and they're causing, trying to lead Israel to their destruction. To the company who said, let us set against them the line of battle, said Moshe, contend not, for the victory shall be wrought among you from the presence of Yahuwah. And to the company who said, let us raise a cry against them, Moshe said, be silent and give the glory and praise and exaltation to your Allahayam. So he's just like saying to every crowd, like, look, it's not, remember what happened to Ephraim. This is not going to be by your strength. Just, you were led here for a purpose. Just stand here, be quiet, shut up. Watch what Yahuwah is going to do. Watch Yeshua, salvation, come for you. And I just thought about this. I was looking for this passage today and I didn't get it in fast enough. And it's so sad because it gives me chills every time I read it in the Aramaic Targum when they cross the Red Sea. And it says right there at that moment, it said they wanted to make the word of Yahuwah their king. They wanted to crown him king, but they realized that he would not be crowned king until the age to come. And that just, every time I read that, it just gives me like chills, like the good kind of chills. Okay, so I think this is Jasher here. So let me just check. Yeah, Yasher. So let's read this really quickly. You can see where the Aramaic Targum is sourcing their information from. And the children of Yasharel lifted up their eyes and beheld all the Egyptians pursuing them. And the children of Yasharel were greatly terrified at them. And the children of Yasharel cried to Yahuwah. It's always a great thing when you cry to Yahuwah and he hears your cries. And on account of the Egyptians, the children of Yasharel divided themselves into 4 divisions. And they were divided in their opinions. So there you go, 4 camps, 4 opinions, for they were afraid of the Egyptians. And Moshe spoke to each of them. The first division was of the children of Reuben, Simeon, Issachar, and they resolved to cast themselves into the sea, for they were exceedingly afraid of the Egyptians. And Moshe said to them, fear not. So it almost made it look in the Aramaic Targum like they had the idea, I guess, to cross the Red Sea. No, I guess apparently they just wanted to jump into the sea, maybe swim for it or something. You see if there were any survivors. They thought they had a better chance in the water than, facing off with the Egyptians. Anyways, Moshe said to them, fear not, stand still and see the salvation, the Yeshua. See the Yeshua of Yahuwah, which he will effect this day for you. The second division was of the children of Zebulun, Benjamin, and Naphtali, and they resolved to go back to Mitzrayim with the Egyptians. And Moshe said to them, fear not, for as you have seen the Egyptians this day, so shall you see them no more forever. The third division was the children of Yehuda and Yosef, and they resolved to go to meet the Egyptians to fight with them. So there you have the Ephraim, and they're still like, we can do this, we can fight. And Moshe said to them, stand in your places, for Yahuwah will fight for you, and you shall remain silent. It's kind of interesting, too, because there you have Yehuda, all the strength of Yehuda, And he was the fighting brother. He's always the one that fought pretty much throughout all of Scripture. And the fourth division was of the children of Levi, Gad, and Asher, and they resolved to go into the midst of the Egyptians to confound them. And Moshe said to them, "Remain in your stations and fear not. Only call unto Yahweh that he may save you out of their hands." After this, Moshe rose up from the midst of the people, and he prayed to Yahweh and said, "O Yahweh Elohim of the whole earth, save now thy people whom thou did bring forth from Mitzrayim, and let not the Egyptians boast that power and might are theirs." So Yahweh said to Moshe, why do you cry unto me? Speak to the children of Yashar that they shall proceed, and do thou stretch out thy rod upon the sea and divide it, and the children of Yashar shall pass through it. And Moshe did so, and he lifted up his rod upon the sea and divided it. And the waters of the sea were divided, there you go, into 12 parts. And the children of Yashar passed through on foot with shoes, as a man would pass through a prepared road. So here we again see in Exodus Targum, once more about the divided in 12 parts. And Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea with the great and glorious rod, which was created at the beginning. I think I covered a little bit about this last week, the rod of Yahuwah, which Moshe pulled out of the garden, and on which were engraven and set forth the great and glorious name, and the 10 signs which had smitten the Mizrahi, and the 3 fathers of the world. So that would be Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the 6 mothers. So Sharaha, let's see if I can count them all. And then Rivka, and then Leah, Rachel, and Bilhah, and the maidens. So there's the 6. And the 12 tribes of Yaakov, those were the 12 sons of Yaakov, and Rachel and Leah, and the 2 maidens. And straightway Yahuwah brought a vehement east wind upon the sea all night, and made the sea dry, and divided the waters into 12 divisions, according to the 12 tribes of Yaakov. All right, continue reading. Did you have anything you wanted to jump in before I continue reading, Polly?
I'm just impressed with the first group of guys that were like, hey, let's just go swim. They have all the gold. They have cattle. They have the elderly. They have the infirmed. They have a bunch of people and things that they're going to leave behind just to go swim. I'm like, that's a tough decision. But they're like, we're just going to make a break for it. I don't know. It's also interesting that Joseph, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, go ahead.
I don't want to control. I was just going to say, honestly, if I'm looking at those 4 options, and it's so easy in hindsight to go like, we know that Yahweh has separated the waters, right? They had no clue this was going to happen. They had seen. This is the thing about how Yahuwah operates, is that we always think we know how he's going to do it. He never does it how we think he's going to do it.
Amen to that.
We're always looking for something, and this is why we miss him so many times. Like he's doing things, and we might miss it, or when he does something, we're just like, oh my goodness, I never saw that coming. So they had no clue this was going to happen. They are trapped in the corner. And I'm looking at these 4 options, and I'm thinking, yeah, if I were to choose, I think I would swim for it. I'd be like, I think I could do this. I think I could swim across. That's the option I would probably take. But anyways.
I would fight, man. I would fight. I would do the combination of confusion and fighting. I would get the guys up, like, okay, we're going to take Ron Wyatt's place. I'd get the guys up in the canyons, up in the hills, right over here, kind of like how, you break the potsherds and you make a loud noise and it sounds like it's more people. We've seen that before, later in history, but, as we read the Bible. And then I just like Sparta, 300 guys, So I don't know, but deliverance came in the way that they had no idea. He's going to do what? I'm sorry, what? But he's just going to have to do it to show him. And here's Moses. And I'm thinking, is he talking to the angel of the Lord with the wall of light, or is he talking to the pillar of cloud? Who's he talking to? He's just looking up. I'm like, I've never really figured that out either. Anyway, just thoughts.
All right. See, where was I? I'm trying to get back to my document here. Here we go. It's not
Book of Exodus.
Oh, here we go. And Mitzrayim pursued and went after them, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots and his horsemen, into the midst of the sea. And in the watch time before daybreak, Yahuwah, the ever-living, Yahaya. Man, it's crazy how Pharaoh, even until the last minute, he really put all his cards on the table. And he's like, Baal Zephon, he's like, he's going to come through for us. And in the watch time before daybreak, Yahuwah, the ever-living Yahaya, he looked out upon the army of Mitzrayim through the pillar of fire. Isn't that awesome? Like, it says Yahuwah, he looked out upon the army of Mitzrayim through the pillar of fire and the cloud. It's like the picture I was given earlier, where it's like he's walking on top of this, and he's physically there, but you can't see him in his glory because it's covered by the cloud, but he's now looking through it. And as a powerful sign, he disturbed the army of Mitzrayim, and he caused the wheels to depart from the chariots. The drivers panted, driving them with difficulty, so that Mitzrayim declared, "Let us flee from the face of Yasharel, for Yahuwah battles for them against Mitzrayim." Then Yahuwah, the ever-living, declared to Mashahah, "Stretch forth your hand over the sea, and the waters will return upon Mitzrayim, and upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen." And it's a good thing that in this instance that he didn't have to hold that rod up all night. He just had to stretch forth his hand again, because I'm getting that picture that he was kind of like relaxing this whole time, or whatever he was doing. We're going to see later on tonight how he did have to stretch forth his hand the whole time. And Mashahah stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak, the sea turned back towards his continual flow. And crying out at him, Mitzrayim hastened to flee to safety. But as a lion shakes his mane when he roars, so Yahuwah shook off Mitzrayim in the midst of the sea. It's the way, Pamela wrote that there. It's like this, like a lion shaking its mane, right? Like it's this violent, the waves are just coming in like with full terror. Like they knew, like it's almost like one of those scenes in like a Hollywood movie where the bad guy, like you see, they zoom in on his face and like he knows he's about to die. Like he's like, oh man, like I didn't win. He has time to process it as he's dying. So it's this idea that they see these waves coming in, just roaring at them, and they're like, "Oh crap! Like we're done for."
Hey, Noel.
Yes.
Imagine Hans Gruber falling from the Nakamoni Tower at the very end of Die Hard.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was actually thinking in my head. I was thinking of Die Hard. Is he like the slow motion as he's going down? Yeah, and that great scene where you see like, and he's processing like, I lost. I was defeated by this dude. All right. And he returned the waters, and he covered over the chariots and the horsemen to all the host of Pharaoh that had gone after them into the sea. Not even one of them remained, but the sons of Yasharel walked on dry ground through the midst of the sea, and the waters were to them as a wall from their right side and from their left. And Yahuwah, the ever-living, saved Yasharel that day from the hand of Mitzrayim. And Yasharel observed Mitzrayim dead upon the seashore. When Yasharel saw that the great hand by which Yahuwah, the ever-living, fashioned a work upon Mitzrayim, and the people reverently feared Yahuwah, and they firmly placed their support upon Yahuwah, the ever-living, and in Mashahah, his servant. This really got to me as I was reading this today, because I'm like, you guys just went through all these plagues of Egypt. And they had just said earlier the night before prior that Moshe, we didn't even want you. Like we told you to leave. You kept coming around. They go through the Passover event. They watch Egypt get destroyed. They loot Egypt. They're coming out. And according to this, they still had not placed their faith or their reverence or their fear in Yahuwah until this moment. It's this moment they're like, okay, we're going to support you now. And I'm just thinking about this, like Yahuwah has saved these people, and they didn't even they weren't even on board. It's just really interesting to think about, and the mercy that he shows us, and that we're on this journey that we don't always get it right away. We're stubborn, and we have to have our hearts loosened. And we saw the same thing with it was Rachel and Leah, that they didn't even embrace apparently Yahuwah until like over 20 years into the relationship, when they finally went back to Canaan, and they're like, okay, we'll accept your Allah Hayam. That up to that point, they weren't totally on board. But of course, Rachel still had some of the idols on her. Anyways, keep reading. Then Mashahah and the sons of Yasharel sang this song unto Yahuwah, the ever living, and they boasted, saying, I will
Hey,
sing.
Noel.
Yes.
Sorry, before you go into that epic poem, may I talk a little bit about the water that's
Please
going
do.
on?
Please do.
Okay, so I'll let you sip your Charlie Brown coffee. So you know the teaching okay. Hello everyone. So you know the teaching that we have from I'm not sure where you pointed it out before. The 10 plagues of Egypt represents or corresponds to a certain group of deities, and so here we are with the king of the sea, Lord Typhoon. And what does Yahuwah do with his domain, Poseidon's domain, the rule of Neptune? He says, my house, and he just like cracks it open in 1 or 12 places. And so I started doing a tiny little bit of a word study on just the power of water. And we all know the epic tale. Jesus is sleeping, and everyone's like, "Oh no, we're gonna die!" And Yeshua stands up and says, "Just calm down, water, stop." And we know from Genesis 1:3, and the Ruach was hovering on the face of the water, or singing, or dancing, whatever the interpretation is. And so all throughout Scripture, water seen as an elemental force. It was it was before, it was ex nihilo, it was prius, it was before creation, and however we view the creation event, water is not mentioned as a created thing in our Torah or Tanakh, but we have the great force of water, and Yahuwah either sends it or protects us from it. And every single time we see a tempest or a storm or any great calamity with water, Nahum 1:3, Yahuwah is slow to anger and great in power. He will no means leave the guilty unpunished. In the whirlwind storms his way, and the clouds and dust beneath his feet. Zechariah 10:1. This is just 3 or 4 from thousands, but not thousands. I'm lying. Many. Zechariah 10:1. Ask rain from him, and when the spring rain, Yahuwah is the one who makes the storm clouds, and he gives them showers of rain, vegetation of the field to each man. Psalms 83:15. So pursue them with their tempest, terrify them with their storm. Psalm 107:29. He causes the storm to be still, and the waters of the sea were hushed. So it's very, very important, I think, spiritually, from the dynamic perspective of who is king, and he's showing by just this whole story that not even the great depths of the Mayim, any water, the overwaters, the underwaters, the waters that we see, Lord Zephon, Leviathan, all these deities that are in the depths of the unknown, the uncreated, the unrealized. Hey, he's in control of them, and he can split them apart at any time he wants to. And to me, that was that what do they call that heavy revy, that deep realization that this is something more than a travel event. This is something more than a miracle. This is a statement, And I think of I don't know which movie it was Peter Jackson made, one of the Lord of the Rings, where they're crossing the river, and they're like, and there's horses that come out of, just crushed. And I'm thinking of this just crushing event, whether it was ice or water or wind pushing up. I don't know, but these guys died, and we found the chariot wheels, and it's over for them at the bottom of what used to be dry ground. And I mean, just momentarily it was dry ground. And that's dry ground. That's the same term that when Jonah was swallowed by the great fish, he was spit up onto dry ground. That's actual ground. That's not just a mushy, sandy, as it says right there, was the chapter you read, that they walked on with shoes as a man walks on a paved road. And so that's it. Yahuwah was saying, you are so ineffectual in my creation, any of you guys that watch this. I'm putting you in your place. Anyway, I just wanted to get to that before you read the epic poem.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw
I'm loving this, man. I'm loving this, by the way. Loving it. So happy.
I want to throw out a couple comments here that were put in. Lisa says that the fact that Miriam was destroyed by their last surviving god's domain is fascinating. And I just like that comment. That was really good. All right, so let's continue reading through the epic poem or the song. I will sing to Yahuwah, for he is exalted, exalted. He has hurled the horse and his rider into the sea. Yah, excuse me, I had something in my throat. Yah is my strength and my song of praise. Yahaya, he will exist to me of Yesha Yuaha, salvation, or you could say Yeshua. This is my Al. In the Masoretic would say this is my El, right, for Elohim, but this is my Al for Al Hayam. And I will establish, and this is interesting because they're acknowledging here that there are many Al Hayam, right? But we have just seen them systematically get judged, and Baal was the last one to get judged. And so they're finally coming to this realization, like, oh, we get it now. Like, this is truly our Allah Hayam, Yahuwah. And I will establish my life on him. I will celebrate. He is my father's Alahaya, and I will exalt him. Yahuwah is a man of battle. I just want to point out there, one of the things we're kind of looking at through this translation, where they say here, he is my father's Alahaya. Kind of interesting, right? And then the subject of this, my father, the father, okay. Are they saying here that Yahuwah has a father? I mean, that's what it reads to me. If Pamela's here, I'd be interested to hear your take on that. Yahuwah is a man of battle. Yahuwah is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has cast into the sea. The third man, Pharaoh's most excellent officers, were pressed down like a seal into the sea of weeds. The deep underground abyss covers him over. He brought them down, plummeting like a stone. Your right hand, Yahuwah, is rendered illustrious. Your right hand, Yahuwah, breaks into pieces the enemy. And in the greatness of your splendor, you have pulled down him who arose against you. She let go the burning heat of your wrath. He will consume them like straw. And in the ruach of your anger, the waters were piled up. Okay, I see. Oh, hold on here. Let me just put this note here from Pamela. She put there, he is Abraham's Alahayat. So that's good context. Thank you, Pamela. You have pulled down him who arose against you. She let go the burning heat of your wrath. He will consume them like straw. And in the ruach of your anger, the waters were piled up. He was set in place like a heap. The flowing sea coagulated, contracted upon himself, froze over were the depths in the heart of the sea. And since I have your attention, Pamela, I noticed that she said that the word for the sea here is masculine. Is that correct? Versus feminine. So I kind of found that interesting, particularly since we look at water as a sentient being, and it seems to be like a lot of the water passages as I see, they refer to the sea as a she, but Pamela's saying here that it's a he. If I'm wrong, please correct me on that, Pamela. This is just based on our discussions we had. The adversary had declared, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will acquire riches, I will be smooth, dividing the spoil. My nefash I will make full with, okay, she says yes, masculine. My nefash I will make full with gain. I will empty out with my sword. Excuse me. My hand will take them as an inheritance. You blew with your ruach, and the sea concealed him. And the great mighty ones were buried like lead in the waters. Who is like you among the Alam? Let's see, she puts the number 4 here for Alam, which is the mighty ones, heroes, sons of Alahayam. So who is like you among the sons of Alahayam, the mighty ones? Yahuwah. Who is like you and set apart, fearful praises, who works wonder? In your chesed, your zeal and kindness, desire and favor. You led forth your people, those you bought back, kinsman redeemer, chief shepherd, unto your Kudash dwelling place. That's a really beautiful picture there of the kinsman redeemer. That's a whole different study in itself. Nations shall hear and obey him. They will be disturbed. Fear, trembling has seized those who settled down to dwell in Phalashath. In that place, the chiefs of Aduam were struck with terror. The rams of, I think, Moab, trembling took possession of them. All the dwellers of Canaan melted away. Terror and dread will fall over them in the greatness of your power. They will be astonished, silent, still, until your people pass over. Yahuwah, until the people whom you have redeemed pass over. You will bring them forth and will plant them fixed, standing upright in the mountain of your domain, the foundation which you fashioned, Yahuwah, the consecrated place, Adonai, which your hands have established, maintained, Yahuwah. He will reign for as far as the eye can see or observe, to the edge of the horizon and beyond, perpetually. For the horses of Pharaoh, with his chariots and his horsemen, went into the sea, and Yahuwah had turned back the waters of the sea upon them. But the sons of Yasharel walked on dry ground in the midst of the sea. It goes on a little bit more. Let me just finish this here, and I'll hand it over to Polly. Miriam, the prophetess, sister of Aaron, and of course sister of Moshe too, seized hold of the timbrel in her hand, and she went forth, all the women after her, with timbrels and with dance. And Miriam lifted up her voice, saying in response to them, sing unto him, to Yahuwah, for he is exalted. The horse and his rider he has cast into the sea, in the midst of the sea. I just want to say really quickly, and Polly, it's totally okay if you're in a completely different place. I'm not even sure where you're at on this, but as you guys know, Pamela and I have really been looking into this idea that, Yahuwah is the son of Allahayam, that Yahuwah is Yahushua HaMashiach, or you could say Yahushua HaMashiach, the son of God, the son of Elohim, the son of Allahayam, is Yahuwah in the flesh. And when I was reading this, I mean, this just straight up plays out like this. We're talking about Yahushua HaMashiach here, right? He's going to be, king of the world and all that. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful picture. I love that. Handing over to you, Polly, for any kind of commentary you have, if you have anything on the song.
I learned a song in Sunday school when I was a kid. Probably someone knows it. I was singing to the Lord, for he is trying gloriously, the horse of my death on the sea, splash, splash. But anyway, it's interesting that Miriam has a different take than her brother. She says the horse and rider he has cast into the sea, instead of the other way around, which everybody else is telling us this. But that, I guess, is an artistic license, Miriam. Did he caused them to go into the sea at the same time? I don't know. Good old Miriam. Pamela sent me a copy in her translation of Psalm 77, 16-20, if I could read it. Would you mind?
Please do.
The waters observed you, Alahayam. The waters observed you. He turned around at you, twisting, writhing in pain, anger disturbed. There it is, the masculine form. And the voice of your thunder, your raging noise, the whirlwind, your lightning made bright the inhabited world. Ha'aratz, she will tremble and shake. Your path circles the sea. Your way weaves in many waters, and the great ones who lie in wait will not discover you. Lead back your people like a flock by the hand of Mahashah and Aram. And that's just right on there, quoting from this passage we have in Exodus about what happened. And so here I am thinking, okay, Miriam was a little bit off, or she was a little bit crazy, but the raging whirlwind, I think there was such a tumult going on with when the waters are coming that she might not be wrong. Maybe it was just a big mess of horses and men going and waters and all sorts of just going on. I always thought like, water splash, right? But you can float. People float. As you go to the surf, I'm still alive, guys. I just took my shoes off when I'm pulling, But these guys, no, they died. They were all dead. Every single one of them. That word "kol" is the Hebrew word there. It's 100%. It's everything. So every single person in Pharaoh's army, except for the naval guys, I guess whatever admiral was left over, he was in charge next. They're all gone. every single one. So, according to Psalm 77, Miriam wasn't wrong. She wasn't taking artistic license, because there was a whirlwind, there was thunder, there was lightning, there was the weaving in many waters, and so I'm blown away by her revelation. And again, I think this is Asaph. This is the song of Asaph, Psalm 77. I could be wrong. It might be the sons of Torah, but I believe it's Asaph. Anyway, that's all I have from that.
Some of you in the comment section were discussing the idea of water being a sentient being, and the idea that water actually predates creation. And the Genesis 1 account, I probably covered it in the first week of the Torah portions. It's this idea that Allah Hayam basically turns the lights on and boom, there's water everywhere, right? It never actually says that he created water. It was already there, which again is aside from the fact that it's a huge slap in the face of the whole Copernican revolution or, space mythos. But this passage here is one of those I use when I gave my presentation on water as a sentient being that is conscious and actually communicates and gives us stores information and can actually communicate with us with that information. This is really interesting because all throughout, I actually have a paper that I wrote on called the Earth is a Womb, where I just go through all the different elements of conscious creation. And so this is one right here at the Red Sea crossing is one of those that I use, where the earth appears to be conscious, and you see the sea and the earth kind of in a discussion with each other over what to do. And this is what it says: the sea spake to the earth, receive thy children. And this is, of course, the Egyptians that are being killed. But the earth spake to the sea, receive thy murderers. And the sea was not willing to overwhelm them, and the earth was not willing to swallow them up. The earth was afraid to receive them, lest they should be required from her in the day of great judgment in the world to come, even as the blood of Abel will be required for her. Whereupon thou, this is Yahuwah, or you say Yahuwah, did stretch forth thy right hand in swearing to the earth that in the world to come they should not be required of her. And the earth opened her mouth and consumed them. So it's kind of interesting right here that, I started commenting on this and writing about this, how the earth seems to be conscious and the water conscious. And a lot of people are like, yeah, that's nice. That's just some ancient text, whatever. But it actually lines up with what we're finding, where literally, water responds to us. It actually does communicate with us, but we are not, trained to understand what it's saying. So incredible stuff. I love it. All right. See, what is this next section from? This is probably another long, lengthy Jasher. Oh, Book of Manuscripts. Yeah, I read that a couple weeks ago. I'm going to skip that. So let's just go. We have 30 minutes left, and I'm fine if we go over it tonight, Polly, because I don't get you very often, and I'm thrilled that you're here with me. So let's
now, when you say you don't get me, Noel, do you mean as a person, as a writer, as a guest on your show?
No, I don't get you often on the calendar. Like in the 9 years or so that we've known, the 8 or 9 years we've known each other, this is the first time that you have co-led a Bible study with me. So I don't get you.
Really?
Yeah, we have never co-led anything together.
See, again, I'm thinking of the Noel in my writing. Real quick on your water memory thing, I'm reading an article on somewhere that water has memory. Psychology.tips. Water has memory, and it was a thing that was introduced in the 80s. An immunologist, anyway, introduced it, and it's talking about electromagnet. And so we know that the blood of the martyrs cries out from the earth. So what's the main component of blood? And that, DNA with water. So yeah, that is astounding to me because I didn't know anything about that before right now. So thank you.
Yeah, the woman who does a lot of the water consciousness tests, somebody just sent me. I actually updated my article, and I needed updated my presentation. Off the top of my head, I can't think of her. She lives in New Zealand, and someone could write in the comment section, and because I want to give her credit for it. But she basically did this test where she spoke to the water, and she said she just said Yeshua. And the water immediately formed an image of a grail. and it put this language in there she couldn't detect. She wasn't sure what it said, and she thought maybe it was Aramaic or something. But she sent it to her fan base, her fellow researchers, and she said, "Can you guys read this?" And they said, "Yeah, we know what that says. That says Yeshua." And she pulled it up, and and I showed in my paper the actual Aramaic, and it is a perfect match of Yeshua. So all she did was she said Yeshua to the water, and the water knew it was Aramaic, and they spelled out in Aramaic Yeshua. It's absolutely incredible. So the amount of work that's being put into this. All right.
Hey, Noel.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. When I was in 8th grade, I went to a Mennonite academy, and we had a science project. And so my science project was going to be weird because it's Polly Hart. And so mine was beans. So I put beans in plants, and I had a tiny little radio, and it had on the Christian station, the talk Christian station, not the other one. And they did a lot of scripture reading. And then I put the other one on KKRD, which was the rock and roll station. That was KEYN and KKRD in Wichita, Kansas. Anyway, and then I put a control in the middle that was equidistant. And I was astounded, and because my mom and dad, raised me to be a good little boy, but and I knew words had power, right? I knew that the spiritual voice, the actual sound waves coming out of my mouth had power. I just didn't understand that since I wasn't speaking, it was a radio wave broadcast, and yes, if you don't cry out, then the rocks themselves will cry out, and so that's what audio cassette tapes were on silicon. And I was like, oh yeah, that works. So my control was about this high. My rock and roll, it stunted and died after one little stem. But my Christian bean sprout was 4 or 5 times taller. So yes, was it the water in it? Probably. It was the same water for everybody, distilled water, I think. And I don't know, unless it was the beans that were reacting. So I have direct scientific proof of beans, at least. I don't have anything about water. I wish I had all that information still, but I guess you just have to take my word for it, or not.
Well, as Jody points out here, water yelled at and cussed out will freeze into deformed crystals. So be nice to water. It's what gives you life. It's what gives us life. Let's respect water and say nice things to it. But anyways, continuing on. Mashahah pulled up camp. I know you're going to love talking about this part, Polly. Mashahah pulled up camp, removing Ath Yasharel from the SHAMA'UATH. There's a number 5 there. That's just the seaweed sea again, just a reminder. Pulling them from the seaweed sea. And they ascended into the wilderness of Shawar. And they walked 3 days into the wilderness and found no water. And they came unto bitterness. And they could not bring themselves to drink the waters from Marah, for they were so bitter. Therefore they called its name Marah. And the people passed the night murmuring over Mashahah, declaring, what will we drink? And he cried out unto Al-Yahuwah, the ever-living, and Yahuwah pointed out to him a tree. And he cast it into the waters, and the waters were rendered sweet. He gave it the name Pits of Calamity and named it Testing. And he declared, if you will hear and obey the voice of Yahuwah, your Alahayah, and hear and obey what is upright, just and true, and prick up your ears to listen to his Matzah command, she put their commands. So prick up your ears and listen to his commands and guard his established statutes. Then all the diseases I placed upon Mitzrayim, none will I place upon you. For I am Yahuwah, the ever-living, your healer. And they came to Ayala Maha, where there were 12 fountains of water and 70 palm trees. They pitched their tents beside the waters. Did you want to touch on anything we've just now covered? Oh, he's gone. Polly's gone. All right. So I'll go ahead and cover this. Want to give him the first dibs, but Polly, I'm taking this. Oh, he's back. Okay. So was there anything on the bitterness and the sweetness that you wanted to cover?
Bro, I have been waiting for this moment, and I had to go use the restroom so badly because I've been drinking this whole thing of water. I was like, oh no, it's coming up and I have to go so bad. Thank you, by the way. So I have the entire gospel story in 5 verses. Exodus 15:22 through 27 as an allegory. Are you ready? I hope you like it. So this is an allegory. This is not what do you call it, the gospel. So as we go verse by verse, we see different parts of this telling us these things. So I'm just going to retell it. 22. Then the promised one led them away. They left the old gods going into the dry place. 23. For 3 days and nights they searched for life. They only found the poison well. 24. So they yelled at their deliverer, what are we supposed to do now? 25. The deliverer asked the father for a plan. The father showed him the tree he would use. And when the tree was planted in the poison well became living water, fit for life, curing them. So the father made a vow that they would remember and obey. 26. If you listen to my voice, do what's right, obey the commands, keep the laws, you'll be redeemed from the old ways, and I'll cure you from evil. 27. Then he led them to an oasis, where there was plenty of food and water, one well of living water for each child of promise, one tree of life for every nation the Father had made, and they lived happily ever after. What do you think?
Pretty awesome, Polly.
I worked on that for a little bit, but it is nice to see. It is nice to see just this tiny story, and I'm like, well, what's the significance of this and that? And I'm like, of course, 3 days and 3 nights. It's just bam, 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 bam. And so, I mean, you could lead someone down the Romans road, but why not just lead them through the desert and say, hey, check this out, man. This is the deliver. This is a picture perfect allegory of what it could be, what it really means to find eternal life. The tree, the cross.
Sum it up for me in 2 or 3 sentences really quickly. Sum it up again. They crossed 3 days, 3 nights, and then what happens?
Then they said, well, give us a deliverer. The deliverer said, okay, this tree goes in the poison well. So this cross gets planted in the evil. And the father makes a vow, listen, if you do what I say, you'll have eternal life. And then they found an oasis, which is heaven, where there was food and water for everybody. Okay. I don't know.
Good. All right. Good. All right. Awesome. So,
yay.
Good. That's good. It's good. You got Pamela to say wow. That is cool, Polly. So when you get Pamela to say wow, you've done good. All right. So we see the number 70 here. We see the 70 palm trees, the 12 fountains. I mean, that should be pretty straightforward for everybody. And of course, the number 70 is a reminder that in Bereshith 46:27, we saw that there were 70 in all that came of Yaakov's family into Mitzrayim to live with Yosef. I wanted to point this out really quickly, just a side note. There was a sister of Asher, she was a child of Asher. She was a daughter of Asher, sister of the other siblings. And according to the Genesis Targum, chapter 46, it says that she was not included among the number because she was carried away while alive into the garden. And then they put a little parentheses there of Eden in case you didn't know which garden it was. And that's a whole nother study, which I've commented on years ago. I was always taught, I feel cheated. I mean, it's nobody's fault but my own, but taught that, I could never amount to righteousness. I could never, I'd never do it if I wanted to, never could, be obedient enough or whatever. But here you see someone who was obedient enough. And there's this long tradition of people through the different ages. We know of Enoch and Elisha, but there were not Elisha, Elijah or Eliyahu. They were taken up to paradise, but there were other people as well. And so here you have a wonderful woman on her way, and they're like, okay, bye. We're going to Egypt. I guess you're going to the garden. All right. And then, of course, we see the other classic example here. We have the 12 disciples of Yahushua HaMashiach, and you guys know the number, the 70 that he sends out. Now, by some traditions, 72, although there are manuscripts that say 70. And I guess they take the 72 number because more maybe manuscripts say 72 than 70. I'm not really sure why they make that. It just seems to me that the most obvious, unless you can play some really good theology on the 72 number, it just seems like the more obvious choice for cross-referencing purposes is 70. But there's a whole passage. I'm not going to read that for lack of time. You guys know it. I've been over it many times. So let's keep reading. The man is given. Let me stop this here. Okay. And he pulled up camp from Elam, and the gathered assembly of the sons of Yasharel came to the wilderness of Seon, which is between Elam and between Sayanuya, on the 5 and 10th day of their going forth from the land of Mitzrayim. And the entire gathered assembly of the sons of Yasharel murmured, which is going to happen for the next 40 years, of course, showing themselves obstinate against Mashahah and against Aaron in the wilderness. Well, that escalated really quickly. They just make it through the Red Sea, great praise, worship service. A couple days later, actually, no, 3 days later, they get the sweet water, and now they're murmuring again. And the sons of Yasharel said to him, why did you give us to be destroyed by the hand of Yahuwah, the ever-living, in the land of Mitzrayim? We sat down by the flesh pots, and we devoured bread to satiety. For you have dragged us into the wilderness in order to slay the entire assembly with the hunger. You know, as cartoony as this may seem to some people, like this is expressing human nature so thoroughly well. Like this is exactly what I've said this time again. I will say this for the rest of the year as we go through week after week of the murmuring. This is exactly what would happen on a day-to-day, schedule of people having, when the stuff hits the fan, how they really feel about Yahuwah, when they're really tested, when they're pushed to discomfort. This is the expression of human nature beyond any other text that I have ever read. Therefore, Yahuwah, the ever-living, declared unto Al-Mashahah, behold, I will rain upon you bread from Hashamayim, from the heavens. And the people shall go forth and gather the debar, the proposed plan, day upon day, to the intent that I may test them to see if they will walk in my instructions or not. That's so interesting. So this now, he's giving them this, he's raining down meat. And he's saying here, like, this is a test to see if they will walk in my instructions or not. Isn't that interesting? And behold, he will exist upon the 6th day, and they will prepare that which they will bring in, and he will exist twice as much as the daily gathering. How much of our daily lives do we go around and just really think about, like, what if this is a test right now? What if all these things that happen in my life are just tests? And I've said this time and again when it comes to baptism, every time we host a baptism, Polly has co-hosted in past years when we would do baptism events. And of course, he does them a lot, but he would do baptism events at the same time in a different location. And I don't know if he has similar stories, but one of the things I was finding is that, people all want to be baptized, and they're all like, I want to come out and be baptized. I'm like, great, we're going to be at this location. Come on out. And then you start seeing it like on cue every time, 24 to 48 hours in advance, the excuses start coming in. And I don't know why they feel that they need to convince me. It's like, why they're not going to show up. But they'll, these things start showing up, and I can't make it because of this and that and this and that. And I'm just sitting here thinking, has this occurred to you that maybe this is a test? Like these are a series of like spiritual tests that are being, or, things that maybe even Satan is throwing out there to try to get you not to come, right? But most people, when we're in the moment, we don't think about that kind of stuff, right? Like apparently it's not occurring to these people at all. So Mashahah and Aaron said unto the sons of Yasharel, just before sunrise you shall acquire knowledge, for Yahuwah the ever-living has brought you forth from the land of Mitzrayim. For at daybreak you will observe the heavy weight of splendor of Yahuwah the ever-living, for he hears and answers your murmurings against Yahuwah. And what are we that you should grumble against us? And Mashahah said, in giving to you Yahuwah the ever-living will give you flesh at dusk and at daybreak, bread to satiety. For Yahuwah the ever-living has heard and answered your murmurings, which you murmur against him. And what are we? For you not only grumble against us, but against Yahuwah. Then Mashah said unto Aaron, speak unto the gathered assembly, the sons of Yasharel. Draw near to the face of Yahuwah, for he has heard and answered your murmurs. And he existed as Aaron spoke of the proposed plan to the entire assembly, the sons of Yasharel. And they faced towards the wilderness. That behold, the heavy weight of splendor of Yahuwah the ever-living was observed in the cloud. And Yahuwah the ever-living, he will debar, speak of the purpose plan to Al-Mashah, to say, I have heard and answered the murmurings of the sons of Yasharel. Set these words in order to them to declare between the dusk, they will devour flesh, and upon daybreak, they will be seated with lakam, bread, and you will acquire knowledge. For I am Yahuwah, your own ever-living Alahayah. And he will exist in dusk, that quails lifted up and covered the camp. And at daybreak, there existed a pouring out of dew in a circuit around the camp. When dusk existed, quails lifted up and covered the camp. And in daybreak, there existed a pouring out of dew and circuit around the camp. And when the pouring out of dew departed, behold, upon the face of the wilderness, minute scales, scales as fine as hoarfrost, lay upon the ground. And when the sons of Yasharel observed it, each man said to his brother, Man ha-wah, for they did not know what it was. And Mashah declared unto them, this is bread which Yahuwah, the ever-living, has given you to eat. This is the purpose plan. And of course, this is manna, in case you don't know what it is. Ha-dabar, which Yahuwah has set up for you. Each man is to gather from it according to mouths eating, taking an amar per skull of the number of nephash, which each man has in his tent. The sons of Yasharel did accomplish it and gathered it, some much and some a small amount. And he measured by an amar, and none had over and above, he who from a great amount and he who from a small amount. There was no one wanting. Every man gathered to the mouth of his eating. And Mashah said toward them, no man is to leave over from any part until daybreak. But they did not hear and obey Al-Mashah, and they left over some part from it until daybreak, and crimson worms grew in it, and he stank. And Mashah was indignant at them. And they gathered at daybreak after daybreak, every man according to the consuming mouths, for when Shamash became warm, it melted. And he existed on the seventh day, that a part of the people went forth to gather, but they obtained none. Consequently, Yahuwah, the ever-living, declared to Al-Mashah, how long will you refuse to guard my SHAMA'UATH? And so the SHAMA'UATH there is commandments or precepts. So where was I? How long will you refuse to guard my commandments or my precepts and my Torah? Now I got to turn to the bottom of the page again. Oh, my Torah. Nice. And my Torah. Observe, for Yahuwah has gifted to you ha-Shabbath, that'd be the Sabbath. Therefore, he rightly gives to you on the sixth day bread enough for 2 days. Every man shall abide beneath his dwelling. No man is to go forth from his place of habitation on the seventh day. So the people rested on the seventh day. And as a sign, the house of Yasharel called its name man, and it was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like flat cake with honey. Mashah declared, this is the proposed plan which Yahuwah the ever-living has set up. A full amar from it is to be kept in custody to the circuit of the ages, for the purpose that they may observe the bread which I fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth from Miriam. And Mashah said to Aaron, take one basket and give it in full amar of man as an established sign resting to the face of Yahuwah, to be kept in custody into the circuit of the ages. As Yahuwah had commanded Al-Mashah, even so Aaron caused it to rest to the face of the presence to be guarded as an observance. And the sons of Yasharel did eat Haman for 40 consummations until they entered into the arats of resting. They ate Haman until they entered the borders of the land of Canaan, and the Amar is a tenth of the Ayafah. Now, basically, they're just saying here that they continued eating this manna until they entered Canaan, and we know that happened within in a generation, 40 years. All right. I'm going to pause there, and Polly, what are your thoughts?
I would like to say a couple of things. The red worm thing freaked me out. But then I looked up the thing about ice worms. They are dark brown in color, and they do exist in snow, in ice. And I started looking at what do ice worms eat? And they eat snow algae, which is an actual thing, bright red. So that is scientifically plausible. And I was like, well, that's awesome. What else do you want to tell me about? Uh, well, the good news is that you can actually have something called soft rim ice. Soft rim ice forms just like dew, where the air humidity is brought to the frost or dew point around the object where the temperature is below freezing. And it's very possible in the deserts to get, bam, there you go. You've got rim ice or hoarfrost, which is a cousin of rim ice. Basically the same thing. It grows just like it. And it comes up and it just kind of grows like petals. We know that water has memory. We learned that tonight, some of us, including me. And so what are the possibilities that static electricity or the charge from the atmosphere comes in and collects protein particles to build something around this rim ice or hoarfrost to make a coriander seed, and it's still got some of the tiny little seeds from the ice worms, and if it stays too long, it's going to turn in and it's going to have those worms. Well, that just sounds like, God knows what he's doing. Well, so it's interesting that in Pam's translation that we talk about knowledge is given, and it's beautiful because who else is going to think of this? Again with the water, what's going on with that water? What's going on? We don't know. Too big for me. My mind's going to explode. But here is knowledge being given from the water. The water memory from knowledge. It's growing its own thing from the air, and I don't know, maybe some sort of a strange form of snow algae that doesn't exist anymore. But again with the ice, again with the just I don't know, just the greatness of He who created us is mind blowing, mind numbing a lot of the times too. And I had one more comment. I'm lying to you. Oh no, yep, that's it. Thank you.
I didn't mention.
I wasn't lying. I have one more comment. The quail thing. I had a science professor explain to me that the quail thing was impossible because there weren't that many quail. Well, in deserts, large traveling packs of a certain animal will move from place to place depending on the region, like locusts and quail. And quail only fly up to 5 feet off the ground. So you just put up a sheet and you're going to catch a bunch of quail. And that's just an easy one. Just a brief. Sorry. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry. Keep interrupting you.
Well, I was going to say, I did mention this earlier, but I'm loving your beard tonight. It's looking really good. For those of you, I for lack of time, I'm not going to go over all this tonight, but some of you will recall, well, one of my favorite presentations I ever gave was on manna and the Millennial Kingdom poop problem, right? And how you look at these castles. I'm not going through it all again, but you look through all these medieval castles and palaces, and they didn't have any plumbing. They didn't have any toilets, right? And so the idea is that the people who lived in these didn't poop. And this is, for me, going to the evidence that the resurrected saints were living there. And one of the things I love about the ascents of Yaakov is, some people are going to read this the wrong way when I say this, but I love because I've seen people criticize me for saying this in the past. Of course, people criticize basically anything I say, but because I love it when Jewish and Christian texts come together and they agree. People immediately in their mind go, oh, Noel's thinking about Zionism right now. It's like, no, I'm not thinking about Zionism, but you have these, you have like in the Aramaic Targum, and then you have something like the Ascent of Yaakov. This is the Ascent of James, comes from Clementine literature. And so this is what they say about the manna, that it was, it says right there, it was a kind of food which was turned into whatever taste anyone desired. And of course I have here, you guys all know the reference to that with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It was like, ooh, roast beef and potatoes and what else she had, like some hot drink. I can't remember what it was, but of course she had, the blueberry pie for dessert. That part hadn't been tested and perfected yet, unfortunately. But you see the same thing here in this is the Legends of the Jews. But one of the interesting things about it was that when it says right here that in the wilderness, and this actually solves a huge theological quandary that comes up, because the camp of the Israelites was, as I mentioned earlier tonight, about 12 miles across. So if you were at the center point, you had 6 miles to walk. Now, I mean, even if you only had a mile to walk, 2 miles to walk, think about it, every single time some people say they just had to bury the poop. It seems like it's been debated a lot that the idea is that they had to remove their poop, right? They actually had to walk out. So every time you're pooping, if you're having to take a hike for a mile to 6 miles, that's a long walk every single time, right? That's going to consume your day. And how many times do you have to poop in a day? So the idea is that the manna, it dissolved into the body and they didn't have to. And there's our millennial kingdom, like right there, boom, there it is. And the reason why the sinners couldn't consume it, because they would have to use those, what are the golden shoots or whatever they called. Yeah, so I mean, you would be taking the walk of shame if you did poop after eating the manna, and you're taking everyone would know this guy's sin. You're taking the walk of shame through the camp to bury it. And then let's see, this is the obvious one, Revelation, that there's going to be hidden manna. They'll be given hidden manna to eat. This is Yahushua HaMashiach promising that. All right, moving right along. Man, these 2-hour studies, they just catch up on you, and they're like, man. And all the gathered assembly of the sons of Yasharel moved camp from the wilderness, Sion. They pulled up stakes upon the mouth of Yahuwah, the ever-living, and behold, they encamped in Rephidim. And this would be where we get Rephidim from. And there was no water for the people to drink. So raise a hand, class. What do you think the people did? And the people strove against Meshahah. This guy was total. I mean, like, oh man, if you ever want to be a leader of the people, but Moses is here to say, like, you must be a glutton for punishment. And he spoke to him, give to us water and we will drink. And Meshahah said to them, to what purpose this contention near me? Why do you attempt to test Yahuwah? And there the people thirsted for water. And what also occurred to me with the thirst is that I was just researching this last week. I'm going to give a presentation on Elijah, when he goes to Mount Sinai and he meets Yahuwah there. It says that he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. You see the same thing with Moshe when he goes up to the mountain and he's writing down the Torah. He's fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. See the same thing with Yahushua in the wilderness, 40 days, 40 nights, right? And these people, they do this and they're able to fast. I mean, this shows some serious spiritual discipline, and they're not bickering, they're not complaining. And at the end of it, now Moshe got to see be with Yahuwah the entire time, but at the end of it, you get to have your spiritual encounter. And so when you see
real quick, I have to ask. You fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Are you just high? Are you hallucinating anything? Or is it, your body, are you pooping really? But I have asked people the same question. They're like, yeah, man, he's just going through like this metaphysical experience because he's like, his body's eating itself and he's in this really weird plane where his brain is just being confused and it's foggy and muddy. But no, man, no. There is a miraculous thing that happens when you so give your heart. When I was in seminary, we had a pastor from India. He came and he said that he did the same thing. He sat on the ground, and I'm not moving until you speak to me. I'm not moving until you speak to me. He was there for 40 days and 40 nights. And Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach, came to him at the foot of his bed and said, what can I do? What do you need? Now, when I was there, and I remember very, very vividly this man, this presentation, and all of us in the room, there was several other people that were doing presentations, and we just wanted to talk to this guy because when he told us the story, we felt it wasn't the glowing face or the voice, but we felt his ring of truth in our hearts that he was telling us the truth. And I've never heard anyone, because in seminary you've got a lot of Western professors, and they get up there and they talk about blah 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 blah. and you fall asleep. But then every now and again, you get a guest presenter who's up there for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you're like, what? Boy, I'll tell you, I've forgotten most of what I learned in seminary, but I remember that 10 minutes because of his story and the ring of truth that came. And on the manna and the body's needs and the taste, if it became everything you desired, could it also qualify that Yahuwah would take it into account that it would be everything you need so that you didn't need to poop? Wouldn't it be possible to be 100% exactly your tongue and your chemical balances? So I think there's a huge ring of truth to what you're saying. And I'll let you get back to it, buddy. I just wanted to throw that at you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to contrast like the spiritual discipline of some versus just the, people who, just bickered. And they're the people thirsted for water. And the people passed the night grumbling against Meshach. And they said, why did you cause us to go forth from Mitzrayim to slay us and our sons and our cattle with thirst? And Meshach cried out unto Al Yahuwah, the ever-living, to say, from what will I fashion for this people? Yet again, they are ready to overwhelm me with stones. Like they're ready to stone the guy. And of course, you guys can see what this is here. We're coming up on the rock that's about to get split here, right at the base of Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia. And Yahuwah, the ever-living, declared unto Al-Mashahah, pass through to the face of the people and take for yourself bearded ones of Yasharel, and take in your hand your branch with which you smote the river and walk. Behold, here I am, and will endure to your face there upon the rock in Cherab. And you will smite upon the rock, and water will go forth from him, that the people may drink. And Meshach fashioned thus to the eyes of the bearded ones of Yasharel. And he called out the name of the standing place, Massa, and Meriabaha, testing and bitter contention, on account of their testing Yahuwah, the ever-living, to declare, does Yahuwah exist in the midst of the people or not? So they're like, that, I mean, that's the thing that just is so, it's almost like this agnosticism that's happening here. I mean, here you have literally Yahuwah being it manifested in this way, in this pillar of fire. And the people can look up, they could see him at all times. They can see the light of illumination. They're not, mind you, apparently on the dark side that Pharaoh was, and yet they're just like, they're questioning his very existence at this point. And that I find that unbelievable to the extent of the moral depravity that you hear this so often, that when like a wicked person dies, and you'll hear someone says, oh, they'll be sorry now they know the truth. And it's like, do they know? Do they really know the truth? Are they really sorry now? Or are they just handed over to their own shadow, their own moral depravity? And then came Amalek, and he battled against Yasharel with the Rephidim, or the Raphayadam. So Meshach declared to Al Yahuwah, choose for us men and go forth to the battle against Amalek. Tomorrow I will make a stand upon the head of the hill with the branch of Alahayam in my hand. I worked like Meshach commanded him, and he fought against, and this would be Joshua or Yahushua, and he fought against Amalek. And Meshach, Aaron, and Chawar ascended to the head of the hill, and it existed like this. When Meshach lifted up his hand, Yasharel prevailed, and when he rested his hand, Amalek prevailed. I'm so glad that didn't happen with the Red Sea, or else, Israel, he would have taken some people out. Oops, But Meshach's hands were heavy. Therefore, they took for themselves a stone and placed it beneath him, and he sat down upon it. I wonder why it was a stone and why not like somebody actually standing there holding him up, that they put it on stones. And Aaron and Chawar took hold of his hands, one on this side, one on the other. Thus his hands existed, Amma wa Nuha, steadfast, until the sun went down. So Yehoshua or Yahwashai vanquished Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And this is the last paragraph, guys. And Yahuwah, the ever-living, commanded al-Mashaha, write, or Kethub, write. This is a remembrance in a sapphire, and recite it in the ear of Yahwashai, or Yehoshua. For I will wipe away completely the memory of Amalek from beneath the heavens, or the Hashamayam. And Mashaha restored the altar, and he called his name Yahuwah Nusaya, the ever-living, my standard lifted up. And he declared, Yah with his hand upon the throne, for Yahuwah the ever-living will wage war against Amalek, circling age after age. So closing commentary on this, Polly, and then I'll give my closing commentary.
Yeah, sure. So Amalek was the grandson of Esau, Jacob and Esau. So he was in the line, right? But we find that during Esther, Haman was an Amalekite. That so many times during the history of Israel, we find that Amalekites, oh man, here they come again. Oh, here come the Amalek. Okay, let's go do it. So eventually, Yahuwah, when they get into the promised land, he gives them to Haram. Haram is the idea that someone or something or a tribe or group or city is devoted to destruction. Haram is the idea that nothing survives. The full culmination of the Haram of the Amalekites wasn't until King Saul. And so I don't know the intents and purposes of Yahuwah in this instance, but he wanted King Saul to devote the Amalekites to destruction. So here's King Agag. So here's Saul. Hiya, hiya. And if you recall, Samuel comes up and he's like, and Saul's like, hey, we did it. We devoted him to destruction. And the famous line, then what is this bleating of sheep and the lowing of cattle that I hear? And eventually on judgment, Samuel, I don't know, I can't remember if it was Saul's sword or Agag's sword or his own sword, just like chop, 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 and hacks him into pieces. That's like the Hebrew, hacks him into pieces. So the Haram, the dedication of the Amalekites, in the just decimation, just the decimation. And you read Obadiah, you're like, wow, why was Esau and Edom so picked on? But look, who have I loved and Esau have I hated? Yes, that's true. There is a tangent of theology that goes into this, and I don't want to go there right now because there's no time. But it is very interesting that the first people they confront wasn't the Philistines. Remember, at the very beginning of 2 hours ago, they had their weapons ready. And Yohanan said, no, I'm going to lead you this way instead. So we would think, oh, yeah, it's those Philistine guys, or it's going to be somebody else. They're fleeing from Egypt, and they're going into this, but they have to flee Egypt, and then it's the Amalekites. And finally, after water, quail, manna, water, quail, manna, etc., we get here, and now we're at the split, where there's a split. There's a definite divine change in their destiny. So this is our first instance of war before the angel of the Lord and the pillar of fire and the cloud by day. Before that, because he did it all for them. They were just running with their cattle and their daughters under each arm and come on, kids, let's go. Oh, look at that ground. So, but now they're like, okay, it's time for battle. So this is a huge transition in their life, their lifestyle, and it'll continue on through the split between the northern and southern kingdom, and even through the three kings. 40 years for Saul, David, and Solomon, the 120 years, the perfect trinity of 40s. It shows up again and again. But yeah, it's big, and it's a definite commercial break for a TV show or end of a night for a talk show, a podcast like this one. And go ahead with everything you have, Noel, because it's probably more than I have.
Well, as Polly pointed out, we see. Make sure my microphone's unmuted. As Polly pointed out, yeah, Amalek was the passage right here. The sons of Eliphaz and let's see, Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she. Timnah was the concubine of Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare Amalek. So this is where the sons of Amalek come from. There had to have been at some point it's kind of strange how they became giants, because we see here there had to be something along the line that, some sort of intercession from either watchers or, an incursion or something that happened. I don't really know what happened. But we see here in Deuteronomy that they were clearly giants. It says the Emims dwelt therein in times past, the people great and many and tall as the Anakim. So they're saying that these Emims were giants just like the Anakims, which also were accounted giants as the Anakims. In case you didn't get the idea of being very tall, they were giants. So at the I hope this is the correct artwork. I'm pretty sure it is. I remember watching this in a video on Mount Sinai, which dealt with Ron. I was going to say Ron Howard, but that's not. Remind me of it. It's getting late, Polly.
Ron Wyatt.
Ron Wyatt. Thank you. Not Ron Howard.
Ronald McDonald.
Yeah, it's tough when you're live and the people like criticize you for saying something wrong. It's like, oh man, it's just, yeah. So anyways, I think this was the artwork I was able to track down, and this is a petroglyph there at Sinai. And you could see here these big, they look like big old, they made them like big squares or something. They look like they're like masts and sails on a ship, but these are the giants, and the people around them are the Israelites coming around to attack them. And these are the Rephidim giants, interestingly enough. And they almost look like they have like this, they look like they have serpent heads almost. I don't know. I'm not going to pull too much out of this petroglyph other than that they're very, very massive. And I put their petroglyph of Rephidim at Sinai. And the word Rephidim, there's, according to Bible Hub, there are 7 occurrences. And the actual, let's see, what is it? The actual definition. I didn't put the definition here, did I? Well, okay, here's what we get. We get, it usually means like the departed or the dead. So we see in Psalm 88 where it says, wilt thou show wonders to the dead? Shall the dead arise and praise thee? Selah. We see in Proverbs 2:18, and it says, to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger, which flattereth her with her words, which forsaketh the guide of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her Alahayam. For her house inclineth unto death, and her path unto the dead. So her path leads to the Rephaim. We see here, and I'll be talking more about this when we get to Og in the coming weeks. We'll be covering more about the idea of the spiritual nature of the Rephaim. We see in Proverbs 9:18, but he does not know that the dead are there. That would be the Rephaim. Proverbs 21:16, it is joy to the just to do judgment, but destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the Rephaim. Isaiah, or of the dead. Isaiah 14:9. Let's see, hell or Sheol, it should be Sheol, but I'm reading from the King James here. Sheol from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the Rephaim for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. Yeshayahu, Isaiah 26:14 says, they are dead, they shall not live. They are deceased, they shall not rise. Therefore hast thou visited and destroyed them and made all their memory to perish. So these are the Rephaim they're talking about. Yeshayahu 26:19, thy dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they arise. Awake and sing, yet that dwell in dust. For thy dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead. And of course, in both these instances, talking about the Rephaim. So the idea is that it seems like there's this idea that the Rephaim are these shades, or you could call them like phantoms, but they're dead, right? And what's interesting here is that within this culture, within the Canaanite culture and the surrounding area. And the archaeological evidence has pointed to this, that, well, let me just read this last quote here. This comes from a quote from the Judahite burial practices and beliefs about the dead by a guy named L. Block Smith. I think he wrote these in the 90s. I thought this was a great quote. Various ancient Northwest Semitic texts are also replete with references to terms evidently cognate with Rephidim as the dead or dead kings. So think about this here, as they're talking about the Rephidim giants coming in. Are these like literally like the living dead, or their actual spirits from Sheol that have come to protect the local people? Lewis undertakes a detailed study of several enigmatic funerary ritual texts from the ancient coastal city of Ugarit. And Lewis concludes that this is very scientific, the way this, like a journal. Lewis concludes that the Ugaritic funerary text provides important evidence for understanding their cult of the dead, wherein beings called the Rapiuma, the long dead, and Malakuma, recently dead kings, were invoked in a funeral liturgy, presented with food, drink offerings, and asked to provide blessings for the reign of the current king. The many references to Rephidim in the Hebrew Bible and contexts involving Sheol and dead spirits strongly suggest that many ancient Israelites maintained the spirits of the dead as playing an active and important role in securing blessings, healing, or other benefits in the lives of the living. So the idea here is that these, very possibly the scene we could be looking at is that Amalek here, he's the sons of Amalek. Of course, they're giants somehow. I don't know, but they're somehow connected with the Rephidim. And it seems like the locals may be incurring or invoking for their blessing. They want to get rid of Yasharel, the children of Yasharel. I mean, they've just crossed the sea. They've just destroyed Yahweh has just destroyed all these gods. And they're like, we got to do something about this. So that may be the scene coming up. And in fact, when we get to it with Og, he's a really interesting fellow, because there have been found like Amorites and other things about Og in that area. And he was considered the guardian from Sheol, from Bashan is like this idea of the underworld, right? He's actually a guardian there, that they may have invoked him and brought him up from the land of the dead to fight Yasharel. So that's my concluding thoughts on that tonight. Did you have anything on that, Polly?
The only novel that I've written, called By the Gates of the Garden of Eden, there's a scene at the very end where the Amorites call the Rephidim the Zamzumin, and I just love that name, Zamzumin. And so they're actually all the Nephilim hybrid Krampus beings that are trying to attack the humans. Kill, fight them and kill them. Anyway, they get gathered in the circle in this green, like a vapor, and it swirls in a circle, and they're chanting Zamzumin, Zamzumin, rise, rise. And this, almost out of like a tiny little hole, this huge hand comes crashing on the ground, and it's just like Hollywood thing. And in the novel, I take to where there's clones going on of people, like you've got a Hillary Clinton and a Bill Clinton, all these clones, and the Nephilim spirit, when it dies from this body, it can just kind of wander around and go into this clone, and it's called the walk-in, and they can just basically be trained on what to say and how to do it. I have always understood the mindset of Yahuwah to devote the Nephilim and the Rephidim and the Anakim and the Zamzumin to destruction. Haram, destroy them all. These tainted seeds need to go. And people, that's when you have that one thing that really bugs you. With me, it's like, well, then why did Joshua kill all those people? I'm like, were they people? I believe in hominids. I believe in Neanderthals. I believe in different races of beings that look like you but are not you. I guess I'm the most racist person ever, because I am a racist. Kill them all. I don't want those dudes walking the earth. That this is Noel's children's home, right? That's not their home. They belong in Sheol. They belong in Gehenna, Tartarus, Lake Fire. let's get chop them up as Samuel did with Agag. You can't do that today. The police kind of frown on that today in today's society, but coexist. Nah. I sure wish you would have left this for the next talk because I could talk about 5 hours about just this one thing, Noel.
Well, that's what's hard. That's what's hard about all these Torah portions is that like you could pick one thing out of there and just talk about it the whole time, right? And it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. Just give me something up in like you want to get out. Like you gotta get on the next 30 seconds or minute.
I love you.
Okay. I love you too.
I was talking to the audience. But no, I do love you, Noel Joshua Hadley. Oh, yeah. Can I share a joke with you? My buddy JB used to call me Mr. Lee because I met him as Paul, but then I changed it to Paulie later. So he called me Paul Lee, Mr. Lee. And then I remember a conversation maybe 4 or 5 years ago with you where you were like, oh, I don't want to be known as Noel, I want to be known as Joshua. And so you're in Joshua Had Lee, Mr. Lee. So in Joshua Had Lee on the show tonight.
Nice. All right.
Get it? Okay. You'd have to write it out. Anyway, that's it. Thank you for having me. God bless you guys. My name is Polly Hart, and have a good night. Bye-bye. Bye.
All right. Yeah. And thank you, everyone, for making this a tradition, for those of you who made it this far. And I'm going to be taking about a 5-minute break, and then I'm going to come back and start part 2 tonight, the late show. For those of you who want to stick around, we're going to be going over Muhammad and the Millennial Kingdom. So that's going to be spicy. And looking forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you again. Love you guys. Thank you, Polly, for coming on. This was great. And I enjoyed it, and I hope you guys did too. Good night, everyone.
Good night.